Good afternoon. This is the Board of Appeals, Town of Hempstead, July 26, 2023, 2 o'clock meeting. Mr. Chairman, do you have any opening remarks?
For those of you who have not been here before, the procedures we follow are we will call the cases. I don't believe the afternoon calendar has any applications for an adjournment, so that we will call the cases in order. Well, not necessarily in order. And the applicant will be given the opportunity to present their case initially, after which any objectants can voice their concerns, and we will close the hearing after the applicant or the applicant's representative has the opportunity to sum up, right? After the hearing is over, we will not accept any additional evidence. If you have something to say, you say it now. If you would like to say, I agree with the person who spoke before me, I don't know whether or not we have any emails, et cetera, or other correspondence from people either in favor or in opposition. However, we read all of those and we take them into account before we make a decision. Okay? Patrick?
Mr. Chairman, we're going to actually go out of order. We're going to call case 43423 Franklin Square, Joseph and Martha Scalera, variance lot area, convert one family dwelling to two family, also known as 962 Washington Street.
Stephanie, let the record reflect the fact that I'm recused on this case.
I do. State your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, members of the board, Madam Chair. My name is Mark Anthony Monastery, architect. My office is located at 1563 Belmore Avenue in Belmore, and today I'm representing Mr. and Mrs. Scalera, who are the owners of 962 Washington Street in Franklin Square, and this property is located in a C zone. My clients purchased this property approximately 25 years ago as an investment property. They lived there for approximately 10 years, and at that time, as it is today, it was set up as a two-family residence.
Do they still live there?
No, they do not.
Thank you.
This is a two-bedroom apartment on the first floor and a one-bedroom apartment on the second floor. Since then, my clients have been renting this property as a two-family residence with no complaints from the neighbors. According to my client, there are many homes on this block in this area that are either legal two-family or are being used as two-family residences. As a matter of fact, the house directly to the west of my client's home is a legal two-family. Presently, the single woman on the second floor has been there for 13 years, and on the first floor has been occupied by the same couple for the past 6. The house itself is located just 4 houses off of New Hyde Park Road, around the corner from a business area with a strip mall, a repair station, and several other businesses. I believe this is a good location for this two-family home. I would like to address the letter that was coming in opposition that was received from an anonymous, I guess, neighbor. The letter states that the house is rented to 3 families, which is not true. At one time, they did have a family member living part-time in the basement, rent-free. There was no and is no kitchen, and nobody presently lives in that basement. We also have no problem about putting a stipulation in that no one is to cook or sleep in the basement. My clients would like to make this legal, and our only request is to convert the house into a legal two-family residence on a lesser lot. The second floor is only a one-bedroom again, and the first floor is 2. My client is not asking to make this home any larger. That's our case.
When you say that they purchased it as a two-family, I take it you mean it had 2 kitchens?
Yes, that is correct.
And do we know anything about how long, like what kind of, did they believe it to be a legal two-family at the time? How were they paying taxes on it?
They didn't.
Anything
They were a younger couple, so they kind of were looking for something like this to help pay for the home itself, so it helped them. They didn't want to raise any red flags, of course, so they left it just as it was. As they started to have children then, they needed more rooms, so that's how they kind of moved on.
You mentioned there are a lot of two-families in the area. I know you referenced one in particular.
Yes.
Can you give us a little more information about that?
So I drove up and down the block and in that direct area. So if you look at it, I'm going to do it as Google Earth to kind of look. There's, matter of fact, on the radius map, actually, can kind of give you a little bit. The area east and, let me just see, east and south are the smaller properties, very similar to my client's property. As you go east on the property, you'll see there's what seems to be obviously, I did not do any research on the homes themselves, but it seems obvious that there's two families. I have also spoken to one of the neighbors who's actually here in favor of, and he may be able to explain a little bit more as he lives there. Then directly behind it, or to the north, there's a newer development that's directly behind them, which is a much larger properties, but the inlet and outlet over there is a little bit different. It's almost a separate neighborhood, if you want to say.
Mr. Marzuko? Do you wish to add any information to the, you signed in favor of the application?
Sit right here. Just introduce yourself and your address.
Dennis Marzocco, 970 Washington Street, Franklin Square, New York, 11010. I am, about 4 houses away, from 3 houses away from the applicant. I see no reason why they can't get this variance. There are several two families on the street, and it's very obvious because there are 2 doors. And I'm a real estate broker, and several years ago, I sold a house that was illegal to a little bit across the street and a little bit over. So they're definitely there. East, yeah. There's really, it's kind of a busy street because there's a high school down the road, but it's still a quiet, it's quiet at night, and
How long
it's...
have you been a real estate broker?
I've been in real estate for over 20 years. I started as a residential appraiser, then I went into sales, and then I eventually got my real estate license about, I think, 4 years ago.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, my broker's license.
So you're familiar with the increased
hear.
benefit of having a two-family, I guess, in the neighborhood? You're familiar with the character of the neighborhood. Could you tell us some more about what the benefit might be to the applicant here to have a two-family, based on your real estate experience?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your last question.
Based on your real estate experience and your experience appraising and your knowledge of the neighborhood in which you live, can you tell us how this might benefit, what benefit this might have for the applicant?
Well, a very obvious benefit, I think, would be if they have a mortgage, it's certainly going to help pay the mortgage, okay? And bring them income. The house is well-kept, as far as I can see. I've never been inside, but the exterior is well-kept. And I think that property has been a mother-daughter or something to that effect for quite a few years.
Okay.
At least 20 years? Okay, at least 20 years, yeah. And my house, when I bought it in 1987, I never lived there. I didn't live there for many years, but right now, it's I have a permit for a senior residence, okay? So it's like a two-family, same thing, same thing.
Okay,
Just a little different,
sure. Okay, anything else you'd like to add?
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Ms. Montanari?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right, do I have any other questions from the board?
Do you have, is there a kitchen in the basement?
Now,
What's in the basement?
it's a big rec room, storage area at the bottom, a bathroom, and some closets, like storage
And is there
closets.
an outside entrance?
There is, we legalized, yes. If you like, I could give you a floor plan of the basement if you'd like.
I think we have that in the file.
Okay, yes, it's pretty clear on that. It's basically one big room with storage around the perimeter of it.
Any other questions from the board?
I move the hearing be closed, the case placed on a decision calendar. When the board renders its decision, it'll be notified.
Thank you, have a nice day.
Thank you, you as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everyone's ayes.
Does he have to, I think he does. I just wait till, I think we have to get John back out and recuse himself again. Yeah, okay. Next, we have the following four cases. We'll start with 48523 near Malvern, Malvern Gold LLC. Variance subdivision of lot, construct dwelling with garage, parcel 1, formerly known as 496 Hempstead Avenue. We also have 48623 near Malvern, Malvern Gold LLC. Variances, a subdivision of lot, no front width at street, construct dwelling with garage with insufficient access pursuant to Section 280A of New York State Town Law, Parcel 2, 85.01 feet south of Emerson Drive, 148.83 feet east of Hempstead Avenue. We also have 48723 near Malvern, Malvern Gold LLC. Variances, a subdivision of lot, side yards aggregate, no front width at street, maintained dwelling on a lesser lot with insufficient access pursuant to Section 280A, New York State Town Law, Parcel 3. Demolish existing garage, breezeway, and pavers with steps. 85.1 feet south of Emerson Drive, 273.22 feet east of Hempstead Avenue. And finally, case 48823 near Malvern, Malvern Gold LLC. Variances, subdivision of lot, no front width at street, construct dwelling with garage with insufficient access pursuant to Section 280A of New York State Town Law, Parcel 4, 85.101 feet south of Emerson Drive, 405.19 feet east of Hempstead Avenue.
Stephanie, let the record reflect the fact that I'm recused on this case as well.
Yes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Acting Chairwoman and members of the board. Christian Brown, McLaughlin and Stern, 1122 Franklin Avenue, Garden City, for the applicant. I'm joined by Mr. Nelson and Mr. Muller, who can put their names on the record now.
Good afternoon, it's Barry Nelson, 220 Pettit Avenue, Belmont, New York, 11710.
Good afternoon. Excuse me, Wayne Muller with the firm of Robinson and Muller Engineers. Offices at 50 Elm Street, Huntington, New York.
All right, we are before you this afternoon seeking permission for variances from the Town Law 280A section in connection with an application to subdivide a piece of property known as 496 Hempstead Avenue, which is a property that is slightly over an acre in size, into 4 building lots in order to construct 4 new single-family homes that would have frontage along a private driveway or access way. And that is the sole reason that this application comes before this board, because as you know, under the town law, Section 280A, any structure that is not on a mapped street or a public street needs relief from this board. The section is primarily aimed at making sure that properties are safely accessible, and as you know, the statute deems a 15-foot right-of-way to be presumptively a safe and accessible form of access to property. Here, what we're proposing is really a companion or piggybacks on a development that is just to the south at 11, known as 1104 Hempstead Avenue. It's depicted on your site plan. That property just to the immediate south is the property with which the subject property would share the accessway. The property to the south is improved, or it has been approved by the town of Hempstead and by Nassau County Department of Public Works for development with a 12-unit townhouse-style multifamily dwelling. That development, it already has approved access along this right-of-way that we're talking about today. So regardless of what were to happen here, the residents of these 12 units will be coming in on this right-of-way, a slightly smaller version of it, which I'll get into in a minute, but this accessway already exists and will already provide access to these 12 units. What we're proposing here is to widen the approved accessway from about 28 feet, which was approved by Nassau County Department of Public Works, and Mr. Mueller actually worked on that project, and we have the approvals here, which we will hand up in a moment. We're proposing to widen that right-of-way to 31 feet, so the driveway access road that's depicted on your site plan would be slightly wider than the typical street, which is typically 30 feet of the roadway. This roadway would be 31 feet. And as a condition of approval, we will all agree to install a 2-foot sidewalk on the private property, on the subdivided lots. That would be an easement in favor of the public, so that there would be a 2-foot sidewalk and curb built on the edge of the subject property, so that there would be safe pedestrian access from Hempstead Avenue to the back of the right-of-way. We have reached an agreement, which I sent over to Mr. Owens and Mr. Bogle, and should be part of your file now, with the property owner to the south, where the property owner to the south has granted, if this is approved, has granted our client an easement to come over that driveway. There are already approved utilities that were an approved utility plan that was went through the county review process, 239F. Those utilities will be constructed as planned under this right-of-way, and our agreement will allow my client to tap into those utilities and run lines from the homes into the water, sewer, and electric that's planned to be built already under this proposed right-of-way. The lots themselves are all exceed the minimum zoning requirements of the town by quite a bit. Mr. Nelson will give you the lot sizes and the configuration proposed for each of the houses, but if these lots were on a mapped street, we would not be before you. We do not require any relief related to lot size, frontage, setbacks.
Except parcel 3.
Well, they don't count the frontage. Oh, I'm sorry, that's on the maintained house, which Mr. Nelson will address. But the lot sizes themselves would be zoning compliant, the smallest of which is over 9,000 square feet. So what we're proposing, as I said, is right now there's one home there that's also accessible through this sort of, long driveway, which is not in good condition. So what we're proposing to do is to, in conjunction with our neighbor to the south, to improve this accessway under a shared maintenance agreement, easements for the utilities, easement, as I said, the maintenance will be shared between the two respective properties, and I can get into the details of that in a moment. We will widen it to 31 feet, so it will be slightly wider than a regular roadway. We will install a sidewalk along the front of the subdivided lots. We will install, also as a condition, we will install a fire hydrant along the right-of-way in a location that will be approved by the Nassau County Fire Marshal. Right now, the approved plans do not call for a fire hydrant, but as a condition of approval, we would agree to install a fire hydrant at a location on the right-of-way designated by the fire marshal as appropriate. As I said, the right-of-way has already been approved. It has a turnaround area, and Mr. Muller can talk about that because, again, he did those plans by Nassau County Department of Public Works. And that was in conjunction with the development of the property to the south. So under 239F, when that development went for building permits, the county reviewed this access way and the plan for utilities, turnaround, and other safety measures, which Mr. Muller will mention. Of course.
Again, I don't believe so.
I asked the question, Mr. Muller worked on the application before the Planning Commission to have the development to the south, the townhouses approved. In that process, was the county aware, my question to him, Mr. Muller, was the county aware of the fact that there was future proposal development for the northerly parcel to put up 4 houses and share that easement, which was approved for the southerly parcel?
No,
They were not aware.
that was not proposed at that time.
Understood. Would this application then require you to go back to the county to have a modification of the southerly application, the townhouses?
Yes. This project would require a modification of the 239F.
Which would affect the southerly parcel as well as your northerly parcel?
That's correct, because of the increase in width of the roadway and the right-of-way.
And the increase of width, where is that taken from? The northerly parcel?
North side, yes.
North side, northerly, right.
Yes.
All of the right-of-way itself belongs to the neighbor, but when it was originally proposed, he was only using about 28 and a half feet. We're now going the full length of his property, so it's 31 feet, and the sidewalk would then be on our client's property, curb and additional 2 feet of an easement over our property to have a sidewalk.
Understood.
And we can hand up the...
Again, Wayne Muller, Robinson and Muller Engineering. For the record, I'd like to submit copies of the 239F approved plans for the southerly.
One moment, Mr. Mueller, since the last time you testified before this board, have there been any changes in your credentials?
No, there have not.
Okay, so you're qualified to testify as an expert as it relates to traffic and parking, et cetera.
Thank you. Yes,
We'll
for the,
accept now into evidence, what is it?
it's a copy of the 239F approval from the county dated June 18th, 2019. for the
Relating to the
develop-
southerly portion.
For the property to the south, as well as a copy of the stamp-approved plans that were prepared by my firm for that property, receiving the 239F approval.
Okay, we'll accept those into evidence.
So Mr. Pellegrini is correct. Since we are proposing to widen this right-of-way, and because our lot also fronts on Hempstead Avenue, which is a county road, if this were to be approved prior to our client obtaining a building permit, it would go back to Nassau County through the Department of Public Works, so-called 239F process, and the access way and drainage and all of the customary engineering would be dealt with at that time.
Okay.
So before I turn it over, I just want to be clear also on some conditions that we would accept. As I mentioned, the sidewalk. I mentioned a fire hydrant. Right now, the site is approved for a right turn only coming out, and we would, of course, agree to continue that that restriction. You have our shared maintenance agreement, so the owner to the south, who owns the property, would be responsible for managing the maintenance, the snow plowing, keeping it in good condition, and so forth. The physical work, he would pay 75% of the cost of that work, and the lots, our lots would bear between them the other 25%, and of course, that would be recorded with their deeds, that they would be subject to those charges.
Mr. Brown, real quick, can you just provide me
Yes.
with a copy of those proposed conditions?
I will provide you a copy of
Thank
all
you.
conditions.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
So is the maintenance agreement the agreement in which you've also conveyed the easement?
Correct.
Interest?
Yes.
In addition to providing for?
Correct. It deals with the access, the maintenance, the right to tap into the utilities, all of that is,
The only agreement as interpreted.
correct. All of that is covered in what I submitted to you.
Thank you.
Garbage would be required to be picked up by a private carter. Again, that would be a condition that would be in the deeds, that you must use a private carter. And I believe the final condition is that we would agree, as a covenant and restriction, that this access way not be extended any further to the east. There is wetlands to the east of this property, and there is a neighborhood that lies beyond those wetlands next to the Southern State Parkway, and I know that there were some concerns of neighbors that perhaps this road would somehow come through into their neighborhood. That's not the case. We will not expand it. We're not legally allowed to expand it because there are wetland setbacks that we have to maintain, and we do maintain on this plan. But we would accept, of course, a covenant to be recorded against the properties, that roadway not be expanded any further than is what is depicted on the plan that's before you. So that's the overview of the application. I'll let Mr. Nelson, if you don't mind, testify to some of the details of the lot sizes and other real estate matters.
Mr. Brown, this
Yeah.
will be a permanent easement recorded
Permanent easement recorded
against everybody's...
against all lots, yes.
The northerly lots as well as the southerly lot.
Yeah, we recorded against, the southerly lot is one lot, it's a rental project, it's not a subdivision, so we record against the southerly lot, and then all 4 of the newly created lots would also be subject to recording of the easements and other obligations.
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson's being offered as an expert in regard to real estate and real estate valuations.
That's correct.
Go ahead and give us your name and address.
Thank you. I gave it earlier.
So since the last time you were qualified by this board to give expert testimony, have there been any changes to your qualifications?
No, ma'am.
Okay. You can testify as an expert in regards to real estate and real estate valuation.
Thank you.
I can't look at papers. Go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
I'm going to hand in some exhibits. I got 2 packets of photographs. There's 26 pictures that'll include the subject property and the
Mr.
surround...
Nelson, okay, can you do me a favor? Can we hand one set of, we'll accept those in evidence. Can we hand one back to whoever here is in interest so they can pass them around and then bring one up here?
Raise your hand in the back if you're interested in this particular case.
All right.
Okay.
All right, we'll send a packet of the photos back, and you can just look at them and pass them along to the next person who is interested. We don't have more than that. One for us, Don. Yes. Did you give them both of them?
They're all...
We need one of those packets of photos. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you handed 2 to them.
There are several people that signed in but didn't indicate whether or not they're in favor, opposed, or just interested in the case.
Okay,
It says it at the top.
don't worry. All right, well, we'll call you. Let's let the applicant finish submitting the applicant's case, and then we'll go through and find out who else would like to speak on the matter. Go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. What I handed in were a packet of photographs, 26 photographs, including the subject property and surrounding uses, which I'll describe shortly. Then I handed in 2 packets of aerial views for the subject property and the subject location. The aerial views, there's legal size, and then I also included on the letter size a tax map. Generally, the subject property is in the unincorporated area, Malvern. The village of Malvern is just to the west. The subject property is known as Section 35, Block 480, Tax Lot 2, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Maps. The area is residential in zoning. The Sudden State Parkway has an entrance exit just to the north, and it's predominantly residential, single families. There are some non-conforming uses along Hempstead Avenue and within the vicinity of the subject property. And why I say that, there's a professional use within a residence at 484 Hempstead Avenue, which would be the northeast corner of Hempstead Avenue and Atlas Court. The application, the property is known as 496 Hempstead Avenue, is a parcel approximately 83 feet on Hempstead Avenue, and it does run a depth of approximately 500-plus feet to the east. The property currently is improved with a single-family residence, and the application provides for 4 houses in total on approximately 44,243 square feet, a little over an acre. Normally, if this was on a roadway, it should yield 7 6,000 square foot lots. What's before the board is 4 parcels. The one that's closest to the street, lot parcel 1, is approximately 84 feet wide, and it has a depth of about 135 feet, and contains 11,160 square feet. Parcel 1 is compliant with area setbacks, etc. It will have access off the right-of-way to the south, eliminating the access from Hempstead Avenue. That house will, as I mentioned, will be on 11,160 square feet. The second parcel will be the next lot, will have a total area of 10,291 square feet. It's approximately the same width, 83 feet, with it from the east to west of approximately 125 feet. That parcel, the only requirements would be subdivision and 280A of the town law. The third parcel is the smallest in lot area, but it does have 9,000, or will maintain 9,492 square feet. 83 feet width from north to south, and approximately 132 feet in depth east and west. That one is slightly unique in that it's maintaining the existing residence on that parcel. So it does need the front yard, the side yard setbacks and the aggregates. Discussing that is that the building department considered the interior parcels, the westerly side and the easterly side as the side yard setbacks, in that the dwellings will be oriented north and south. So it's maintaining on the front 5 feet, on the west side, 5 feet to the proposed subdivision line. That would be to parcel number 2. Parcel number 2 will maintain a rear yard setback of almost 60 feet.
Mr. Brown, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Mr.
That's
Nelson.
quite all right.
Parcel, go over the numbers again, what you're referring to parcel. Is that tax lot 1281?
I'm sorry, what?
What, you're referring parcel 1, which is the, which is?
Parcel 1 would be the one that's right on Hempstead Avenue.
Okay. And then I go.
And then we're going easterly.
So 2, 3, and 4. Thank you.
Parcel 3, 9,442 square feet, and I addressed the the side yard and side yard aggregates. The side yard would be on the westerly side of the building as it's oriented to Hempstead Avenue. That'll be approximately 5 feet. And it's to the rear yard of parcel 2. Parcel 2 would have approximately 60 feet rear yard setback. The other side will maintain, and it's because the property is currently improved with the dwelling, will have approximately 30 feet to the subdivision line. Now, aggregate side yards is being required in this application in that the width of the lot is almost 132 feet. The aggregate side yards proposed is 35 feet, but because it's 132, which is 30, we would be required to have 30% of that area, which I believe would require a aggregate side yards of 35 feet, where 30 is being proposed.
Mr. Nelson, on your photograph, that's an overview, the area that, the one I'm referring to is the one that has what appear to be the one set of existing condos, if you will, that are predominantly complete, and the other set that is much less further along in its construction?
Yes.
That aerial? The driveway for that shown in your aerial view, is that the same location of the proposed shared driveway? It's in that same location, but
Which
I realize...
which page are you on the bottom right? Oh, the area view, okay, yes.
Okay, so
That is,
that sandy-colored driveway right in this photograph,
That's
that
the-
is the same location where the proposed easement would be for both of them?
yes.
Now, are there, I can't see from the photograph, are there garages under these things?
There are, under the townhouses to the south, there are no garages. Cars will be, there'll be paved parking spaces under that canter, underneath
So
the
they back
cantilever.
into that driveway easement area, that would be where, there's no other parking there, I'm just looking for parking. So
There are, for the apartments, or whatever you want to call them, the townhouses to the south, there are additional parking spaces. If you would like, I do have a copy of that plan that I can, okay. You want to hand that one in? Okay,
just tell me about where, are they?
in the middle of first you got 6, the first group, which is almost completed. Then in the middle, you have
Wait,
3 parking
Wait,
spaces.
so the first group, 6, they have parking underneath?
All parking underneath.
Okay.
Additional parking between this next set of buildings, which would be 3 spaces. Then you got 6 more units. And at the end, I believe you have 7 additional parking spaces.
So does each unit have 1 parking spot underneath or 2?
I think
Sorry, I guess that is Mr. Mueller question.
I believe they each have 2 under, I think the code was requiring 2.
It was 32 spaces were required for the development, and we provide a total of 34 spaces.
I just want to know where they are. That's all I'm trying to figure out.
They all have underneath the cantilever, I believe each one has 2
Okay.
and then you have the additional,
3 and 7.
right.
Okay, keep
So you
going.
got 24 under the building and 10 outside.
That was previously approved by this board, correct?
Yes, sir. That was for that building requiring a rear yard setback to the south with the houses that front onto Atlas.
Thank you.
So I addressed the side yard and side yard aggregate for parcel number 3. Now we have parcel number 4, which would be the last parcel on the easterly side, which contains 13,350 square feet, double the minimum requirement of 6,000 square feet for the zone for which it's located in. That'll have conforming setbacks as far as as far as side and side yard aggregates, as far as front yard setbacks and rear yard setbacks as well, which was conforming. Now, one of the aerial views I handed in will include a older Nassau County Department of Assessment tax map. And if you look at your radius map, which I believe you have a copy of, you'll note that there are 4 dwellings to the north. They happen to have addresses of Emerson Drive. That parcel is somewhat similar to the subject property in the early 2003, 2004 timeframe. It had one house on it. It had a driveway off of Hempstead Avenue, and it was demolished. And now what you see today on fronting Emerson Avenue, I provided photographs of 4 houses. That's almost a mirror image of what's being proposed in today's application. Those homes front to Emerson Drive, which is the road that abuts the egress onto the Southern State Parkway eastbound. To the south of the subject property is which includes the right-of-way, is the 12 townhomes. So the impact to the character of the neighborhood area is de minimis. 3 new homes with no access through the easterly side, which would be also known as Arnold Road. In fact, the subject property is interior of the L-shaped of the townhomes on the south. The Hempstead Avenue is the main arterial road north and south. Access for those would be off the right-of-way, which the 12 townhouses would, which are being under construction right now, being constructed today. The homes are single-family homes with garages and pads for driveways. The No, they're all still under construction. Those homes are on approximately 1.5 acres. The subject property is a little over an acre, and what was formerly one house to the north was approximately 1 acre, and now 4 homes. Values in the area, typical one-families range from approximately $500,000 to $1,250,000 plus. The new colonials would sell for approximately between $1 million and $1,250,000. They're one-family homes. There will be the normal conditions that this board grants under a subdivision application. Colonials in style, internal garages, and as traditionally in the past, owner-occupied. My opinion, the request that's before the board is reasonable. It's not out of character for the area, and the immediate impact would be to the 4 homes to the north, which is a similar development, and the townhomes, which provides access for the subject property. Hempstead Avenue, the main arterial road, right near the Southern State Parkway. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, or we'll let the next expert speak.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
I guess it would be the proposed fourth, I guess it's the one closest to the wetlands.
To the west, to the front, on Hempstead Avenue?
No,
to the
one
east.
closest to the wetlands.
Yes.
All right. Is part of that wetlands?
Yes, in the rear yard.
So how much is wetlands? What, like a third of
It
it
is shown on your
wetlands?
site plan. I don't have the breakdown. That is the largest parcel of approximately 13,350 square feet. The main body of the property outside the wetlands is in excess of the 6,000 minimum requirements.
Okay,
that
but
answers
how are
your
you
question.
going to make sure that nothing is built on those wetlands? Is it going to be in the deed?
There's a 50-foot buffer that's required and shown on the plan.
Right, I see that.
And so we can put it as a covenant, yes, that you can't build in that buffer.
Right. Why did you even include the wetlands in that property?
It's part of the present subject property includes a piece of what's covered by wetlands, so it's just the wetlands go on to our land. But this is the,
No, I understand it does, but if you're selling a piece of property, why are you including the wetlands? Why don't you just cut the wetlands out?
And then it's got to be,
where would it, someone would have to own it. We'd have to subdivide off a
Okay,
piece of,
okay.
so.
and
So,
we do find similar situations. We found this here in Woodmere and South Seaford, near waterfronts, near similar locations where the back part or the nearest part to a stream or reservoir or lowlands are wetlands
Right, I just want to make sure during dry weather.
Yeah.
If it's lasts for a couple of years, someone just comes and decides to build a cabana on it.
no, they can't do that.
No, I know, okay,
The
but
town would
something,
never even offer, well, they can do it.
right.
but we can put, sorry, we can put that we can add that as an additional restriction in the deed for Lot 4.
Okay. Also, the driveway that is there now that goes to the house that's built, that'll be done away with?
Yes.
Correct, yes.
And I see that it says the apron will be removed, so no one can get in there. Okay,
To the existing site, right.
right, okay.
Again, there'll be a sidewalk in a lot of the area where that is.
So all houses are going to access the right-of-way.
Correct.
Is there a reason that your site plan shows parcels 1 and 2, that there's an access existing or proposed before you were able to get that easement? It shows one driveway off Hempstead Avenue, and it just accesses Lot 1 and Lot 2, and it drops 3 and 4.
It goes to the house.
I think that's depicting what's there and what's going to be removed.
Correct. It's just an overlay.
Okay.
That exists now. That's how you get into the house that's presently there. That will go away.
Is the building department correct in their analysis? Okay. Did the building department realize or see that you have a common cross easement with the property to the south?
Yes.
When you made your application?
We submitted when it was under review at the zoning board, and staff can correct me, we were asked to submit a letter from the southerly property owner saying, yes, he is going to enter into this agreement. He hadn't signed the formal agreement at that time, but he did submit a letter. And I know that the staff went back and forth with the building department numerous times to get this application handled correctly. So I believe, yes, the building department and BZA staff were aware of the plan.
And Mr. Pellegrini, yes, that is correct. There was another portion of the application for the property located to the south that required a restrictive covenant be recorded, that the portion that would now be used as the driveways be fenced solid. That would also, I required that Mr. Brown submit some sort of consent by the southerly property owner to file a modification of that condition, as it would be impossible for them to have that ingress with that condition still into effect, along with the other cross easements that Mr. Brown
And I was going to come to that at the end, that point Mr. Bogle just made.
I guess my question is, with this easement of 31 feet, does it still require technically a 280A?
I
15 foot.
I believe it does require a 280A because it's a private driveway, not a mapped street. But the purpose of 280A is to make sure that the accessway is safe. And the statute, as you're saying, says that if it's 15 feet, minimum is considered presumptively safe.
Yes.
But it's in the discretion of the zoning board to make sure that that whatever's proposed is appropriate. based on the presumption that if you have at least 15 feet, it's appropriate for emergency
That's
vehicles.
the New York State 288.
That's correct.
Aspect of it.
Correct.
So
And that's,
you're still, I guess basically you're still charged with the obligation of asking the board for relief of a 280A, even though it's 31 foot and not 15 feet.
correct. Correct. I think that it is an accurate denial. I agree, but our position, of course, would be that this access way is perfectly safe and appropriate and has already been approved. We're actually making it better than it had been prior.
Got it.
Mr. Muller?
Good afternoon again. For the record, Wayne Muller, Robinson and Muller Engineering, office at 50 Elm Street, Huntington, New York. For the record, I'd like to submit copies of the document prepared by my firm dated July 26, 2023.
What's the document?
It's just a brief synopsis of the potential traffic impacts associated with this project and a discussion of the site access as it relates to the plans that are before the board this afternoon.
All right, we'll accept that in evidence.
I apologize. You have a traffic study? May I ask a silly question? Why wasn't that submitted to the planning commission? They held up their, why wasn't that traffic study submitted to the planning commission? The planning commission reserved decision, and one of the items that they wanted was a traffic study.
Only because, as is often the case with the planning, the study had not been completed by the time that they hold their sessions. You know, they hold them several weeks in advance of this board. We don't always have the materials at that time. So we can and we will submit it to them now that it's been completed.
Kind of holds us up, though, doesn't it?
I understand. I understand.
And in my opinion, having respect for the planning commission, it also puts me as an individual board member at a disadvantage because I like their input. It's a different aspect of what
I
they
agree
show
with you.
us.
Now, just for the record, they did ask me a number of questions prior to their deliberations, which I believe I answered because they didn't follow up with any further questions to me. They did not ask me to provide them with the traffic study as part of their inquiry. That wasn't what they asked me about. But again, this happens quite frequently that the expert reports aren't done until a day or two before the zoning hearing, and the planning commission is looking at it 2 weeks prior, and this gap often causes this problem. But you're right, Mr. Pellegrini, they have the right to weigh in prior to your vote, and we'll submit that to them at the close of this hearing.
Mr. Mueller?
Yeah.
When you go through your presentation, would you address whether or not the report you prepared for the subject that's before us today includes, and if so, how, the additional impact of those 10 units once those are constructed? Or is it 10, 6, and 8, 12?
12.
I apologize. So what impact these houses plus those 12 units will have on the traffic patterns and the congestion and whatever else you're going to analyze?
Sure. Just like to go through it real quick. As a lot of the introduction to my report has already been discussed for the board this afternoon, but however, it is proposed to construct an additional 3 homes on the property, which is located directly to the south of the existing multifamily project, which is currently under construction.
It's north, no?
North, you're right. The multifamily project is to the south. As indicated on the plans prepared by, I believe it's Carmen Dunn Engineering, PC, it is proposed to share the right-of-way that's currently being constructed by the property to the south in order to provide access to the 4 homes, the existing home and the 3 homes, onto Hempstead Avenue. As Mr. Brown and Mr. Nelson has indicated, the proposal before the board today contemplates the widening of the right-of-way from approximately 28 feet, excuse me, to 31 feet in order to provide access to the homes, to the proposed homes to the north and the condominium project or multifamily project, which is located to the south, thereby providing a single access point onto Hempstead Avenue for a total of 16 units, 12 which were previously approved by both the town board, this board, and the Nassau County Department of Public Works. 1 home which currently exists and has its own access driveway onto Hempstead Avenue, and then the 3 additional homes which are being sought to be constructed on the parcel before the board this afternoon. As indicated by Mr. Brown, and as I submitted previously as part of the proceeding, the condominium project had received 239F approval from the Nassau County Department of Public Works for their driveway out onto Hempstead Avenue. As part of that approval, the county indicated that the driveway would have certain restrictions imposed in order to restrict the traffic coming out of the driveway from making a left-hand turn. So essentially, the access to the common right-of-way would be a southbound left turn into the property, a northbound right turn into the common right-of-way, and a right turn exiting the property to go north on Hempstead Avenue. Left turns traveling in a westerly direction would be prohibited. And I believe that by widening the, excuse me, the woman would stop shouting. By widening the driveway.
While he's testifying, okay?
By widening the driveway, an additional 3 feet, all it does is provide additional width for the vehicles to travel on the right-of-way, which in my professional opinion is an improvement. In addition, we're removing the existing driveway that currently serves the one home, thereby removing a potential conflict point by the traffic that's exiting the project that's currently under construction and the activity at that driveway, which is located essentially just to the north of the right-of-way, which is currently under construction. As indicated in my traffic engineering assessment, which I just submitted to the board, the additional 3 single-family homes would generate, using traffic generation statistics presented in the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, 11th edition, a total of 2 additional trips during the morning commuter peak hour, 2 additional trips during the midday peak hour, 3 in the afternoon peak hour, and 3 on Saturday.
Mr. Muller, I just don't see how we can analyze the traffic impacts of this project without doing it with the other project, given that they're going to share.
Well, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
On page 2 of 3 of my report, we also estimated the quantity of traffic that would be generated by the 12 multifamily units, and then combined that with the traffic generated by the 3 additional homes, because the one house is already there. So as it relates to the morning commuter peak hour, there would be an additional 8 trips generated by both the townhouses and the 3 additional homes, 7 trips during the midday for the townhouses and the homes, 10 trips in the PM, and 10 trips on Saturday.
How many bedrooms do these houses have, the 12 units?
No, I do not know. It's based on a per-unit basis. Oh, the
Right, I'm just,
the proposed homes? I do not know.
no, the 12 units, if they have even 2 bedrooms, I have a hard time imagining that there's only going to be 8 people leaving in commuter time
Well,
out
again,
of 12 units plus 3 additional there.
but again, these are the same statistics that I presented at both the town board public hearing for the approval of the changes zone for the townhouses, and again, I believe at the zoning board hearing.
I just think the
For the
whole is
relief that was
greater than the sum
required.
of its parts at this point.
But again, we're looking at the way that the traffic studies, and I've testified to this before this board numerous times, we're looking at the peak hour. So that's the peak hour in 1 hour. That doesn't mean to say that there's traffic in other hours generated by the townhouses and the single-family homes, but that during the peak hour of activity for the combined project, the maximum number of trips that we would anticipate for the 12 proposed multifamily dwelling units and the 3 single-family homes, because one already exists and that's generating traffic on the road, would be 10 trips.
How do you determine what the peak hour is? Do you back into it and say, oh, well, we're going to analyze this and we figure 7 o'clock is going to be the peak hour for this kind of an area?
As it relates to trip generation, the peak hour is well defined by the studies that were performed during the preparation of the statistics that are presented in the trip generation manual that I referenced. So the peak hour could vary depending on where you are on Long Island. So
Okay, what was the peak hour that these morning commute trips were?
based on statistics available from the New York State Department of Transportation Engineers, via their traffic data viewer, the average annual daily traffic on Hempstead Avenue within the vicinity of property is 38,010 vehicles, and that's based on 2019 actual volumes.
But what
So,
hour
so
are
I-
you
I'm
using?
getting to it. So if you look at page 2 of 3 on the bottom of it, we specifically call out the various different peak hours during the same time frames that are referenced for the traffic generation of both the combined projects. So during the morning commuter peak hour, which is between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. on Hempstead Avenue, there are a total of 2,507 vehicles.
Okay, and how many exit trips? I see your other statistics, just tell me.
6.
During that time, from the combined 15 new units, not including the one, right? How many exit trips did your calculation determine?
6.
Would be, so
In the morning, 6 in the morning,
15 houses
6.
living, and 6 extra
Correct.
cars were going to leave there during that 1 hour.
That's absolutely correct. And that seems realistic, and the way I see that is, I live in a street with 4 homes, and during the peak hour, I'm the only one who leaves. My neighbor doesn't work, and the other one's a school teacher, she leaves way earlier than me. She's not there during the peak hour, so not everyone has the same schedule.
I understand.
So that's why the statistics take that into account. So maybe some people don't drive during the peak hours, some people do, other people's maybe go after or before. So yes, for the combined 15 units, 6 trips during the AM peak hour, and as it would relate to the percent increase in traffic on Hempstead Avenue, that would be far less than 1%, which is de minimis. Because Hempstead Avenue is experiencing 2,507 vehicles. If we were to go to the midday peak hour, the level of traffic on Hempstead Avenue drops a little bit, and that's between 2 and 3 p.m. in the afternoon. That's 2,411 vehicles.
That's when kids are getting out of school, parents are moving.
But these are based on statistics that aren't obtained by me, they're obtained by the New York State Department of Transportation.
Okay, and how many trips do we have there? Is that the 7?
No, that would be, that would be 7 trips. Again, far less than a 1% increase in traffic, which again, in my opinion, is de minimis. If we were to go to the PM commuter peak hour, the peak hour at that point is between 5 and 6 p.m. There are 3,052 vehicles. The combined project, as we would call it, would be 10 trips. Again, far less than 1% increase in traffic, in my opinion, de minimis. And then on Saturday, the DOT didn't have any data, but I believe in my mind it would be fairly reasonable to assume that on Saturday, if we were to look at the midday peak hour on a weekday, the volumes are pretty comparable. So again, we would look at a less than 1% increase in traffic, which in my opinion is de minimis. So the level of increase in traffic that would be generated by the combined project, the 12 approved townhouse units and the 3 proposed single-family units, would not have a significant impact on traffic conditions in and around the subject property and on Hempstead Avenue to the north and south. The numbers are just not that great. It's a very small
I
development.
kind of find fault in your study in the sense that you're referring always to 3 new dwellings, when in fact there are 4, and that 4th one, which is existing, is going to use the right-of-way.
But what I'm talking about is the increase in traffic on Hempstead Avenue. It's a change. It's a net change, absolutely. The traffic that's generated by that house, because it has its own separate driveway, is already included in the numbers that were obtained from the DOT. So therefore, to double count it, in my opinion, wouldn't be correct. We took, maybe a more liberal approach, but we discounted that out of what would happen at the driveway. But again, if we were to add one more vehicle, using your logic, then it would be 11 trips rather than 10. And again, far less than 1% increase in traffic as it relates to the increase in traffic on Hempstead Avenue. So essentially, as indicated in my report, we believe that the increase in traffic is significantly, it's low, it's de minimis.
But if something's already over capacity, then every little marginal increase is not so de minimis.
I mean, whether or not Hempstead, at the times that I visited the site, I didn't view it to be over capacity. Yes, Hempstead Avenue is a busy road.
Well, we don't know though, because I get these are estimates and they're based on ITE numbers and all that, but it's also not, you're driving there now, but you're not experiencing the impact of all the new units because they're not occupied yet, so.
But again, in my professional opinion, I don't think I'd even know that they were there. Because again, you're looking at 10 trips spread out over an hour, and that's entering and exiting. So that's one trip every 6 minutes. However you cut it up, that's really not, you may not be there when one of those cars leaves in the 15 minutes where it leaves. I mean, so we're not talking about very large numbers here. They're very, very small numbers that wouldn't trigger a more traditional traffic analysis that would be prepared for, say, a large shopping center or an office development, or even a significantly large multifamily development. These numbers are extremely low, and they don't trigger any type of significant analysis beyond which I prepared and presented here this afternoon. In addition, again, there's a significant improvement here by widening the right-of-way from approximately 28, 27 feet, it varies depending on where it is on the site to the south, to 31 feet, and providing that sidewalk, which now provides an avenue for patrons or the residents of both the multifamily development and the single-family homes to access the sidewalk network, which is available on Hempstead Avenue. And to me, that's a significant improvement. But again, we're not looking at a significant increase in traffic. In my professional opinion, based on the analysis that we performed, it's de minimis and will not have a significant impact on traffic conditions in and around the subject property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not to belabor it, but is it fair to say that since we already have 12 units coming there, the addition of the 3 or even 4 houses is only accounting for an additional 1 or 2 trips? Is that basically what you're saying?
On average, that's correct.
Okay. So just a final point, Mr. Bogle referenced that, and this is part of our application, that under case 30 of 2018, when this board granted several variances for the companion property to the south, there was imposed in that case a condition number 2, that required the 1104 Hempstead property to create a living fence along the borderline with the property that's the subject of this application. Obviously, that was done to screen the one house that's there from the multifamily development. It's not practical, if this were to be granted, to have 4 houses have their front yard completely obscured by Leland cypress trees. So we would ask that that condition be removed if you were to grant this case.
Okay, I'm not sure if we can consider that in this, but we understand your request.
I think we procedurally covered that.
Mr. Brown submitted consent from the Southern property owner to request that modification in conjunction with this application.
And so finally, I just close by saying that I will provide, at the board's request to Mr. Bogle, a list of all the conditions that we would agree to if this were to be granted. As you've heard already extensively, there's already a 12-unit development that's approved here that's going to use this right-of-way. So what we're proposing really doesn't, in my opinion, change the conditions all that substantially. What it does is put a 1-acre site of property to a more productive, beneficial use without causing any burden to any of the neighboring properties. We're doing it with the consent of the neighbor, obviously, and the site improvements will make this a more beautiful property, more attractive, more beneficial, and the conditions that will exist, whether or not this is granted, are not substantially different than what would exist if you were to allow us to build 3 new homes instead of maintaining 1 old home on a very long driveway. So with that, we'll close and subject to the comments from the neighbors.
Thank you. We're going to take a 2-minute recess, and then we'll come back, and everyone else who would like to speak, we'll get you sworn in, and we'll give you a chance to speak, okay? Just 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah? So, the sellers of this house was theirs? Maybe I should put in the value of the house. If it's, actually, in your summation after the names, include the benefits of the applicant. Or does some, this is a condition, well, it's good. The house on one, for maybe 600-700, they get double the price. Yeah. Right, and then ours is maintain it.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a terrible configuration. What's that?
I handed them all. No, I handed them all in.
On the other property? On conditions on theirs? Right. No, they are rentals. They are rentals. Minerva was the lawyer. They are rentals. You can ask him. We can draft them. It never is.
Suffolk DA's personally
What's that?
He's all over the place.
he's going to personally prosecute.
He's all over the place.
Rex, come on.
He was yesterday's on WABC, and I heard him on WOR this morning. He can't really say anything. He can't really say anything. But why are you on this? Like, he's really on himself.
Because he's going to drag Burke.
He's running.
Burke's going to come in.
Shitload of money.
He's really on
Burke
himself.
and Spoda.
Yeah, he's got higher aspirations.
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid of him around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they picked a good candidate when they picked him. He's part of this sort of revival of the Suffolk parties. We could do worse.
let's resume the hearing. For those of you who intend to speak, can you please stand so you can all be sworn in together by Patrick? Okay, great. All right, so Mr. Owens has been kind enough to go around and find out which individuals who are here would like to speak. So I guess I'll just, unless there's some preferred order, is there someone who'd like to speak first? Okay, go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Patrick. Give your name and address first, and then tell us what you'd like us to know about the project.
My name is Charles Wolfinger. I live at 599 Mohawk Road.
I'm
And
sorry,
my
sir.
main
Wait,
concern
say your
on
last name again, sir. I just want to find you my radius map.
I'm sorry. Okay. My main concern about the new buildings are the traffic on Hempstead Avenue. That's about 200 feet before Ocean Avenue and Hempstead Avenue meet.
Thank you.
And right, that would be heading north. There's the exit to the thruway, Emerson Avenue, the entrance to the Parkway. And he mentioned they built the 4 new homes, that they're similar. Well, they did, but now they park on the sidewalk or park down in our neighborhood, which is a big problem. And as far as going through the wetlands,
What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Charles Wolfinger.
Thank you.
I'm a little nervous.
When you say they park on your street, now these aren't occupied yet. Who's parking on your street?
Well, he brought up the new homes that were built, similar to what he wants.
Okay.
There's no parking, and they park on the sidewalk or down in our neighborhood.
Okay.
Now, if they can't make a left turn there, how are they going to get into town? They're going to come down through our neighborhood or cross over the Parkway and make a turn on down by Cornwell. And everybody's going to want to go into Malvern, right? So how are they going to do it coming out of it without getting killed? It's impossible. The railroad tracks are there. The farm is there. There's a lot of traffic, a lot. And just last weekend, 2 boys were badly crashed there, every week almost. And they want to add more traffic. It's not good. And the wetlands, who's the guarantee if somebody gets killed on Hempstead Avenue, they don't go into Arnold Road? That's our main concern. If they can't make a left turn, they're going to be big troubles there. There's already 3 traffic lights within 300 feet. And a turn into Emerson, that is impossible. And that's my concern.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Someone else would like to go next?
My name is Roger Griggs, and I live at 1125 Sunapee Road, which is in West Hempstead in Malvern Oaks South. That's the development immediately to the east of this development, on the east side of the wetlands. Now, several concerns. Either a misstatement or correction. You're building 3 homes, right? And leaving the existing home? Okay. I thought in the first opening you said you're building 4 homes. I don't think the board is familiar with this intersection at Emerson and West Hempstead. Now, Emerson was originally the access road to our development. Our development is bordered by the Southern State Parkway, the Long Island Railroad, and this creek known as the Pine Brook wetlands. As such, Emerson was turned into a street, not an access road, when they built those 4 homes to the north of this proposed property. By doing so, the original property had a driveway that entered from Hempstead Avenue. This turned those 4 houses that my colleague here, Mr. Wolfinger, mentioned. The people park, there's a picture in there of one house with 8 or 9 cars. They've cemented the whole front, and they park 8 or 9 cars. Since there's no parking on Emerson, this is what Mr. Wolfinger was saying, these cars have to come into our development, park on the streets, or they park on the sidewalk of Emerson Drive. Now, I understand that the proposal doesn't really affect us, but the traffic is something to be really addressed. If you look at this intersection, Emerson Drive has a stoplight, and it takes 2 or 3 cars, and you're going to be at this new entrance road. So if the light is red, you'll have 2 or 3 cars with an appropriate gap front to rear. And then you have tremendous traffic coming up and down Hempstead Avenue. Now, I don't know about this study of traffic in New York State. How old is it? 10 years? 5 years? Not the study he did, but the study from New York State. How old is it? The traffic study, I've asked them to do a study a number of times because the traffic on Hempstead Avenue is unbelievable. They come up single file. It's nonstop. You have to wait for the light to turn red back at, I guess it's Morris Avenue and Ocean Avenue, in order to get a break just to come into our development, which is Emerson Drive. Now, if these cars from the townhouses and the 4 houses proposed are going to enter and exit onto Hempstead Avenue, and when exiting, they're going to have to turn right only. If you have 2 cars stopped at the light, you're going to have somebody come right up and block this roadway. They can't turn left. All the shopping local is in Malvern. So that's going to force the cars coming out of here for both properties to turn right, and like somebody said, go where? Come into Emerson Drive and try and make a U-turn to go back and turn left, cross the Parkway. We have many accidents right opposite Emerson Drive. You have to look at a map if you don't go there, all right, is the Southern State Parkway entrance and exit. There's 3 roadways side by side. Emerson is 2-way. We have enough problems with people going east, making a right turn to get on the Parkway, and they either go down Emerson or they miss it altogether. They stop dead. They don't know which way to go. There's a picture of the sign, a big state sign. People, I don't think they can read today. Nobody follows the sign. I've suggested where the sign could be, and a different small sign, but they don't do it. The only thing that separates Emerson from the Parkway entrance is a guardrail, and another guardrail from the exit. If you're going east and you exit the Southern State, you're coming out, there's guardrail, road, guardrail, sidewalk. So you have to look at this intersection because the traffic is horrendous on Hempstead Avenue. And my whole point here is the fact that the study, statistics, they don't mean nothing. They're useless. You got to stand there and watch. Take a look at it from 3 to 6 o'clock. Forget about your study from Albany or wherever they do it. I don't think they even look at Nassau County. They're using some other kind of statistics, because if they did, they would know that it's way off, way off.
Thank you, sir. Let's see, I guess this gentleman's next, and then we'll move to you guys after that.
George Lepard, 1146 Sunapee Road, West Hempstead, New York, 11552. I'm on the, just south of the wetlands on Arnold Avenue. I'm on the dead end of Arnold Avenue. So that furthest house on the north that they're proposing to the back and where that wetlands area is, if you cross over the wetlands, my house is right on the right. So my biggest concern, okay, is this, that, and I spoke with Leon, the developers, about the covenant, about putting that covenant in, that they will not go over the wetlands. Now, we know what covenants are. We all get married. We sometimes break covenants. My question is, I wanted to get a laugh here today. Can that covenant ever be broken? Say 10 years down the road, okay, it's in there, and 10 years down the road, they're like, the wetlands actually are gone. They don't need them anymore. They decide, and they say, you know what, we're getting rid of the wetlands. We're filling it in, and now we're going to bring a road across, and they propose it down the road. Could that happen?
The DEC police would be after them in a minute. However, you must understand that the wetlands are fluid. They do change.
Okay, but when they've had that covenant will hold?
Mr. Brown, yes?
It would be legally binding, but whether or not people breach, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, but you're right. First of all, it would be legally binding. It would run with the land as a permanent covenant against the property. And I understand people breach things, but you have to think of the practicalities of this. You're talking about building a roadway through 100-something feet of wetlands and connecting into another public road. So it's not the sort of thing you could do in the dead of night, and then people would notice that there's cars going through the neighborhood. I mean, it's impractical. There's no reason for that to happen here. So I understand the concern. I don't think it's feasible that it could ever happen, and we will legally restrict it from happening on the grounds that I mentioned.
Thank you, and thank you for putting that covenant in. So as far as, I like 4 houses rather than 3 big giant buildings, okay? And that I don't want. So I'm probably more 4 houses rather than big high-rises. Thank you.
How about the gentleman in the brown shirt, and then behind him after that in gray shirt?
Good afternoon. My name is Al Freeman. I live at 248 Morris in Malvern Park, which is up the street from the farm. I appreciate the presentation of the developers and the representatives today. I see that a lot of work has gone into it. I'm also gratified and not surprised that several of my neighbors who I've never talked to before and came up with the same concerns about what's going to happen with the traffic pattern. You know, I've lived in the neighborhood for 40 years. I speak fluent Malvern Park traffic patterns. Anybody who has had to cross over Hempstead Avenue or, you know, an Ocean Avenue to get to the other side, to get to my block in the middle of rush hour traffic, or stood at the light at Morris and Hempstead and waited for the light to turn green, count 1, and any number of times watch a car come barreling down through the intersection, you know, and you learn to live with those eccentricities, and, you know, you make the ride safe. Now what's being proposed, unfortunately, it may seem incremental, but it's adding another layer of human nature that whatever state surveys have been taken counting traffic patterns doesn't account for the way people drive. Now, it's been made mention about who's going to come out of that area going into Malvern and want to take that right turn in perpetuity, go over up to Cornwell School or Emerson or wherever, turn down and come back around. And similarly, anybody coming off the Parkway that wants to go to their home in that development is going to be told you can't take a left turn there. In fact, you guys are going to have to put up all sorts of signs that no left turn, no left turn, no left turn. They're going to go, in theory, again, down Cornwell, come back around to Morris Avenue or however they're going to do it so that they can come out and take a right turn into their development until they don't. And that doesn't count all of the trade people that are going to go into that development that may not see that it's the same way. The bottom line is that you're opening up a can of worms to increase the percentages that there are going to be more accidents. And human nature is human nature. And unless you're going to put police presence there all the time, you know, giving out tickets like occasionally that happens with the Malvern police at certain intersections that are constantly being violated, you're going to have some more serious accidents that are there. Now, I don't know about the right turn being protected in perpetuity. The gentleman before me mentioned, you know, is concerned about someday the wetlands being changed and that thing, but, you know, I wonder if that right turn is going to be a forever thing. Nothing is forever, but you know what I'm saying. When you leave Hempstead, when you leave those developments and you take a right turn away from Malvern towards the Parkway as a right turn only thing, you know, Mr. Byrne, I believe, mentioned that that was built into the proposition that there would be a right turn only. And again, I take them at their word, but again, things change. And my concern as a resident and someone has mentioned before about all you have to do is sit there and watch these traffic patterns with, you know, with common sense, and you can see that this has a lot of holes in it. Whatever's coming down from high, they aren't local. And local people have just told you, one after another, that this is a problem. And as well as the presentation was for how houses are, the offsets, the yards, you know, and all the other things that went into the building part, I don't think that this other part has been taken into account as carefully. Even you guys, listening to your questions about it, you're residents, you know, and you understand what's going on, and your questions were along the lines. All we're doing is providing the local color and saying, this doesn't work. There's got to be more safeguards built into this. Otherwise, you're going to have some serious problems. Thank you.
All right, sir in the gray shirt.
Oh, my name is Walter Cordero, and I live in 654 Emerson Drive, West Hempstead, New York, 11552. First thing is I want to tell you is my original language is Spanish, so I want to be very, please, you can be patient. If you don't understand something, you can ask me again, I will give the answer. I'm trying to figure out somehow you can understand. First thing, the gentleman started, he wants to make the person who's sitting in the middle, he wants to make a very attractive the area, right? Nice. Attractive means when you have a space. Attractive, that means when you have people against the house, building up. First they did I don't know, it's 12 houses. They say it's two bedrooms. I don't believe that. I have picture, it has a 4 floors house. Well, they have taken all the privacy from the chiropractic, what they have in there. The people, I think they have a pool, the people can enjoy the pool. You have no privacy from the windows because they look everything to the bottom. So they're going to have to keep everything closed, so try to say they have some privacy. Now, I'm affected, it's true. One house is behind my house is already being constructed. There's already a house in there. I think they're trying to building up 3 more houses, right? I have a dream. Years ago, I used to live in Queens. I have a 5 family. I have a wife who passed away a few years ago, and kids. I have 5 kids. I sold my house. We was really Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, and Staten Island, very tight. I have a dream. I have 2 jobs, working all my life, and I say, you know what? I'm gonna try to give something to my family, to give some space. I moved to Long Island to Nassau. The gentleman who is involved in the project is the one who sold the house to me. Okay, I moved to the house. My house is nice. I don't bother to nobody. I live nice and quiet so far. I live for 13 years in there, I guess. The police never bother me. We have 4 new houses right in Emerson Drive. They was built up like 12 or 13 years ago. I bought one of the houses with a 30 years mortgage. Right now, with the taxes in Nassau County, it's not easy to pay the house. You have to work very hard. Now, the gentleman have the nerve, I think was my friend. He is involved in the project that he's going to build up the house. So when you talk about friendlies and you talk about money, it looks like the money comes before the friendship. I don't know if you understand that. Okay, so he took me to the project where he's going to do it. This is so weird, because the first thing is, it is true, they have a deep place, a wide place, but it's not deep enough. The house what they have in there, the 12 house they already built up, they took all the privacy for everybody. Nobody is happy in the area. And I don't know how Malvern, because I live in there, Malvern is very strict. I don't know, because it's the end of West Hempstead, that where they build up these houses in there. Now, I'm so sad, right? There is going to build up new houses in there. If they build up the new house in there, he told me the back of the house is going to go against the property, the guy who has a pool next to me, and the 2 houses on the other side. There's no space, and there's not going to be no privacy. It's complete no privacy, no accidents. If you guys can do me a favor, I don't know if anybody has access to the police department. I hear accidents every week. I don't want to say every day. Every single week, I woke up with the accident. They changed already. They have 4 poles of the lights. They changed the 4 poles of the lights already at least 4 times in the last 2 years. It's always a problem. Turning up when you get it out from the Southern Expressway, and also from the other side, is always an accident. The poor guy who owned the house next to the Southern Expressway, he already changed the fence 3 times. The car goes over the fence. Anybody knows that?
Yes, nobody exit from going north.
Thank you so much. They changed a few times. I just suggest, I only can give you my opinion. I want the one who affected. Is that you mind and you decision what you want to do. If you want to take with that, go ahead. But I think this is not nice for Nassau County. We live in Nassau. We don't live in Queens. We pay taxes for Nassau. We don't pay taxes for Queens. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Let's see, I have at least one more person who wants to speak. Do I have only Mr. Sullivan left? Okay, Mr. Sullivan, you're up to bat.
Good afternoon, Tim Sullivan, 119 Malvern Avenue, Malvern, New York. And for the record, I'm also the mayor of the Incorporated Village of Malvern. Thank you, board members, for hearing us today.
Thank you.
This intersection has plagued the Village of Malvern for quite some time now. My main concerns that I want to bring to you today are both traffic and density. The last speaker pointed out something that troubles me the most. About 12 years ago, the Nassau County purchased Grossman's Farm, now known as Crossroads Farm, for the sake of keeping property open and enjoyable. Beginning this hearing by calling the application for the current development a piggyback project for a project that the town approved much to the objection of the Incorporated Village of Malvern in 2016 is probably not good vernacular to use. I do agree that on the surface, what the application is proposing does not seem all that inconceivable, considering the size of the acreage that they are looking to acquire. However, please note that's linear acreage. We're not talking about, you know, a circular access point here. I will not go on and on and on. I think some of the prior speakers were very articulate in the concerns about traffic patterns and coming off the Southern State Parkway, going to the Southern State Parkway from Hempstead Avenue and Ocean Avenue. They are too a concern of mine and a concern of our residents. I believe that the 1104 project that was previously approved by this board in the town of Hempstead or board members prior to you altered the impact or had significant impact on the area and altered the ambiance of both the Malvern Park, Malvern Oaks, and Village of Malvern communities. If you should go to My Nassau Property, the county's assessment website, and I have two photos here, if you'd like me to submit them for the record. They show what the subject property looked like in approximately 2020 and what it appears to look like now. And you'll see that this area has been negatively impacted by the southern development that this application is proposing to share a driveway with.
Sir, did you take the photos or download them or something?
I did. I took it directly off their website.
Okay, so we'll accept those into evidence. Mr. Bogle, can you show them to Mr. Brown, please? They're
They're of public record.
Okay, keep going.
I will note that I do know the applicant, and I think he's a responsible developer, at least one of the members of the applicant, which I've been told. I do feel, however, that the proposal here will further deteriorate what has already been approved and has already significantly altered the traffic patterns, or will significantly alter the traffic patterns, the appearance, and a higher density in the immediate vicinity of the village. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's everyone who wishes to speak, right? So, Mr. Brown, you want to have your rebuttal?
Very briefly sum up.
Mr. Brown, before you,
Yes.
there was no mention on since the townhouse, this right-of-way is going to be privately maintained,
Yes.
there'll be no town services to that road, such as snow plowing, garbage pickup.
Correct.
How is that going to be accomplished?
We have an agreement, as I mentioned before, on maintenance. The maintenance, physical maintenance would be handled by the townhouse development, and the cost of that maintenance would be shared between the property owners.
Where's lot number 4 at the end going to put his trash to get picked up?
The garbage will have to be done by private carting. So a truck will come down the street. That'll also be a condition in your deed. You will not be able to get public sanitation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown, one other question.
Yes.
I think I was confused a little. When you get off the Southern State and you go down Hempstead and you wanted to turn into there, are you allowed to turn a left in?
Yes, I know the gentleman mentioned, you are permitted a left in. The only restriction that Nassau County imposed is right out only.
Okay.
So again, that condition already exists, the right out only. That's a Nassau County rule, and it will remain a rule, I'm sure, for as long as there's a Nassau County DPW. My concluding remark is simply this. I'm familiar with the area. It's a busy area, there's no question about it. But the law sort of strikes a balance. The application that's before you today is very limited on your purview. It relates, as we've discussed, to the 280A law. These lots are zoning compliant. The uses are the uses that are contemplated under the zoning ordinance. We're not asking to, say, build 12 houses where you're only allowed to build 8 houses. or we're not coming here and saying, we'll rezone the property so we can build another multifamily development such that the density would be increased above what's allowed under the present zoning. So there's a balance in the law. Property can be developed under the existing zoning rules, and yes, that does potentially put more cars on the road in some contexts, but those are your property rights. It's really when you go beyond what's allowed that these types of questions come into play as to how much more traffic in Hempstead Avenue bear, say if we were proposing 20 apartments, or we were asking to build on substandard lots, as I said, so where instead of having a legal 4 homes, we're seeking variances to allow us to have 8 or 10 homes. Then I think all of these points would be totally fair for consideration. But given the fact that we're building on zoning compliant lots at actually a density that's lesser than what this property could be carved up into under the town zoning ordinance, I think that that balance is, the developer is allowed to develop, and you can't really say, well, putting another house on a legal-sized lot is going to bring more cars onto the road. Well, all development does that to some extent. So that's the balance. That's really the purpose of the zoning ordinance, is to define your sort of your rights, and then if you want to go beyond that, then these other considerations come into play. So that's how I think this should be analyzed, notwithstanding the fact that, yes, it is a busy area, but these 12 units were already approved, they're under construction, they will be built regardless of what you do with this case, and the addition of 3 more single-family homes, I think we've all conceded it's incremental, and it's not going to have a major impact on what the conditions are there today, one way or the other. So with that, I will close.
All right, thank you. Do I have any other questions from the board?
I move the hearing be closed, the case placed on the decision calendar, and when the board renders its decision, you will be notified.
Everyone who signed in will receive a copy of the decision by mail once it is rendered. Okay, thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.
Participating. Safe home, everyone.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry.
We're very familiar with it. Thank you. Thank you for staying. Take it.
Where you going? See you guys. Take care. You feeling all right?
KTK? Yeah, so. I think they're giving stuff here. Oh, you want the check? Yeah, that's it. Oh, I have it in my office. I'll get it for you, not today. No, I'm not cashing it, don't worry, I'm not cashing it. No, it just, it'll make. Yeah, I'll get the check back. Oh, well, I'll check.
No, I understand.
Yeah, I'll give it to Gail, right when we finish up tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, I'll bring it to the mail back. I'm so sorry. No.
So the next one will be a tattoo parlor or something that will come in. A little kid, don't look. This couple, you know, I believe this, you know, it seemed like
Doing here out of order.
I dropped in just to watch Dominic, and so maybe I could learn something. The next one, Tony Licatazi. Yeah.
This is a I met him at the
I don't know if we ever met him.
Oh, okay.
Kellenberg,
First annual.
they have that many, they have that many lawyers?
Surprisingly, yes.
Kellenberg?
Yeah, we had about 50 show up, and their mailing list is about like 400.
Wow.
Well, they graduate 500 kids a year. Some of those kids are going to become degenerate lawyers.
Okay.
Including my son.
And other people will make the honest
Exactly.
It looks like.
I'll let you guys check.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's one of the old houses that was fire, the world of the Tiffany. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And this, what's the building department? These things always get thrown in. Right. I'm told it's like a 1610. I think probably much, maybe it's 70-30 or something. Okay. But I just want to make sure that the proposed improvement is Laurel Hollow. Okay. I mean, Howard. Yeah. Howard. Yeah. Howard and I talked. Yeah, so Howard's great. Yeah, he's great, so I can go with him first, you know, and if I can have all the, you know, I appreciate that. Sure. Give my best to Peter Weiler and Peter McKinnon.
Steph, you good? Okay. Okay. Next, we're going to call cases 42123 through 42323. Atlantic Beach, Anthony Licatazi. Variances, lot area occupied, side yard, rear yard, maintain first and second story deck with stairs all attached to dwelling. Special exception to construct cabana with pergola attached thereto, higher and larger than permitted with less than required side yard setback and lot area occupied variance. Replace, install 3-foot high pool enclosure not permitted. Maintain pool equipment not permitted in the side yard, also known as 188 Bayside Drive. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Please take a seat and state your name and address for the record.
Dominic Minerva and D'Agostino, 107 South Central Avenue, Valley Stream, New York, attorney for the applicant.
Barry Nelson, 220 Pettit Avenue, Belmore, New York, 11710.
Good afternoon, Anthony Licatazi, 188 Bayside Drive, Atlantic Beach, New York.
Before you proceed, I have to acknowledge the fact that I am a distant relative through marriage of one of the parties to this proceeding. And if anyone thinks that I cannot be fair and impartial in connection with this matter, I would respectfully request that they mention that now, and I will recuse myself from the case.
We have no objection to you sitting on the case.
Okay. Then you can proceed.
The application before you today is for variances for the premises known as 188 Bayside Drive, Atlantic Beach, New York. Premises is also known as Section 58, Block 152, and Tax Lot 45 on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. It's in a Residence B zone, and the Licatazes have lived in the house for approximately 30 years. The area variances requested are to maintain a partially completed deck, pool cabana with pergola, pool equipment in the side yard, and a 3-foot-high fence pool enclosure. The variances requested include lot area, side yard, and rear yard setbacks for the deck, height, size, and side yards for the cabana, and side yard for the pool equipment, and height for the pool fence enclosure. For the most part, the requests today are for replacement of older structures that were previously issued variances under case numbers 1137 through 1141 of 2011, which included variances for lot area for a bi-level deck with bar and trellis, shed, which was used as a pool cabana, and pool fence enclosure, among other variances. At that time, they were renovating the house and doing an expansion and renovation of the dwelling, so there were additional variances related to the dwelling. These variances were granted, and the structures erected in 2011. The applications before you now are for replacement structures. The previous deck had a peaked roof, and the current deck has a flat roof and is in substantially the same footprint, so it is a reduction from the previous variance, and the cabana is also smaller and in a much better location on the property. The previous deck received variances for side yard, rear yard, and lot coverage. They received a side yard variance of 3 feet versus the 0.48 feet that's proposed, and they received a variance for rear yard of 0 feet versus the 2.8 feet proposed. And the lot coverage requirement for all the structures was granted previously at 31.2%, and the application before you today for all of the structures proposes a lot area of 29.18%. Additionally, although it's not a variance, I would note that the height of the peaked roof was 15.5 feet on the approved plans from 2011, and the height to the top of the flat roof is 12 feet 5 inches. The pool enclosure remains the same at 3 feet in height from the prior variance. There was an approval from the State Department of Codes as well to permit the 3-foot-high pool enclosure. When I get to my exhibits, I'll submit copies of all that. As my exhibits, I'll also submit the building department approved plans from 2011, which shows all of the structures and all of the zoning charts for what was previously granted, as well as copies of those previous variances. With regard to the cabana, it's permitted to be up to 700 cubic feet. The proposed cabana is 720 cubic feet, slightly over the requirement, and the remaining portion of the cabana is actually an open trellis, open on all sides and the top, and the applicant will agree to never enclose the trellis. This cabana is set back 4.11 feet at the minimum from the side yard. The side yard property line runs at an angle, so that's the minimum setback. It increases as you go southerly on the property. Whereas the old shed was set back 2 feet off the side and the rear property lines. So the new location is a vast improvement if you look at the 2011 approved site plan, which I'm going to submit, and the current site plan. I would also note with regard to the old, and this may be a little anomaly in the code, if you're a shed, you're permitted to have up to 12 feet. If you're a cabana, it's only permitted to be 7 feet and 1/4 inches high. So we do need a height variance for the cabana proposed at 11.16 feet high. But if it was deemed a shed, it wouldn't need the height variance. And again, it's in a much better location, and it's adjacent to the pool, and it's away from the water line where it previously was. We have a petition to submit from the neighbors that consented to the granting of the requested variance, along with a marked-up radius map. And I'm also going to submit a list of similar variances granted in the surrounding area. I just checked the ones on the subject block and Scott Drive, which is located across the canal. There was many variances, and I'm going to submit that exhibit. Just one I want to point out, 187 Bayside Drive, located directly across the street from us. It received a lot coverage variance of 55%, which also included a multi-level deck in that application. And again, we were 31.2% granted in 2011, and our proposal before you today is for 29.18% lot coverage. I'll just go through my exhibits and submit them. Applicant's Exhibit A will be the prior decisions from 2011. Exhibit B are the building department stamped approved plans from 2011, showing all the previous structures that were granted on the site. And again, you'll notice that our structures are substantially the same that we're proposing for replacement. Exhibit C is the list of prior variances on Bayside and Scott Drive, granted to other properties in the area. Exhibit D is our petition, original petition signed by the neighbors, along with a marked-up radius map of those neighbors that consented. Exhibit E, I'm just going to submit, we have some aerial photos taken from Google Earth that are dated 9/15/2020. And Mr. Nelson just informed me he has better ones, but I'll submit these anyway. And those are my exhibits, and at this time, I'd like to call upon Mr. Nelson to testify. And Chairman, I would just ask, having previously qualified Mr. Nelson as an expert witness regard to real estate valuation and its use, if you'd be willing to continue that qualification.
Mr. Nelson, you've previously been qualified as an expert in connection with real estate and property valuations by this board. Have any of your qualifications changed since the last time you appeared by the board?
Yes, I've been previously approved, and no changes have occurred to my status.
Then we will allow you to testify to give your opinion as to those matters in connection with this case.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to hand in some exhibits. I have 36 photographs of the subject property and the surrounding uses, both from Bayside Drive and from the rear yard of the subject property, which would include the area adjacent to the waterfront area to the south of the subject property. I also have aerial views, as Councilor handed in some. I got colored ones that I'd like to hand in that will include the subject property, the adjacent residences, and the residences on both sides of the waterfront to the south. Lastly, I'll just hand in a copy of the Nassau County Department of Assessment tax map for the subject property, and it's known as Section 58, Block 152. The subject property was highlighted in orange, and it is tax lot 45. As far as the aerial views, I did put a pink dot on top of the house, which is the subject property. I haven't shown them. I do have copies, and they can be distributed. As Council mentioned, most of the property had been approved previously under previous applications for similar uses that are proposed or looks to maintain under this applications today. The shed, the cabana, the deck, and they're generally in the similar locations. The interesting aspect of the 1- and 2-story deck at the southwest corner of the subject property, that is adjacent to the neighbor to the west, and that deck generally begins at where that property to the west, and that's why I handed in the tax map to the neighbor to the west at their southerly point of the property. That would be on tax lot 44. This is to the south is the waterfront community, or the waterfront, the extension of Reynolds Channel. It's the Reynolds Canal area, and both properties on the north side of Scotch Drive and the south side of Bayside Drive are all waterfront, as well as the north side of Bayside Drive being on Reynolds Channel. You have photographs that will depict same. The interesting points would be that previously approved for a covered porch in the rear with a peak of about 15 feet. The deck itself today, what's being proposed for the 1 and 2 stories, is at somewhat the same height, slightly lower, but as you add in with the railings on the property, it will be a little bit higher. Much of the setbacks previously approved, again, would be on the southerly side where it's on the waterfront, and a small portion to the westerly property line at the southerly point of the neighboring property. Aerial views will depict same, as well as the Nassau County Department of Assessed Tax map. Lot coverage is slightly under 30%. It's over the new code, or the amended code, where it says 27.5%. The previous application was approved at 30.3%. Council handed in a list of variances that were approved. A lot of those were approved under the old requirements of the code at 30%. So those variances technically are over 30% and substantially greater than what the applicant is seeking for lot coverage. The lot area occupied, similar or less than what was previously approved, and less than many of the ones that were approved prior to I think the change in the code was around 1997, was it? Where it was 30% allowed, and it was in 2007. The pool equipment in the side yard, the pool itself is conforming as far as setbacks, location in the rear yard. The pool equipment is on the westerly side of the dwelling, and at that point, the outside edge of the pool equipment is still 15.54 feet off the property line. It's not in the minimum requirement of a side yard setback. The westerly side, from the pool equipment to the property line, is 15.54. The easterly side, at its narrowest point, is 9.9 feet. The pool equipment is not within the required minimum setback and at least 15 foot wide. Again, it's a irregular, slightly oversized parcel, and because of its irregularity, the side yards are greater, and because of if you did as per definition of the code, the front width, or the width of lot, is approximately 70 feet, so you need slightly oversized side yards, which was amended, I believe, in 2007 as well. But most importantly, the equipment is outside the minimum requirement and is 15.5 feet off the property line. The 1 and 2 story deck, it's the setback and part of the lot coverage. photographs that I provided will depict the deck that's currently there. That's what's looking to be maintained. And I did provide you photographs of that location as well as the aerial views. And what you see is 1- and 2-story decks. Second-story decks is permitted. It's not outlawed in the code. It's not a variance itself. And you'll see many of the houses in the area have second-story decks off their balconies and off their houses, both on the south side and on the north side of the canal. It's all of this stuff we're talking about is in the rear yard area of the subject property. The rear yard setback, most of the homes in the area have boats, have docking facilities, and as far as the setback, in my opinion, it's not going to be detrimental to any of the properties in the area as well as the adjacent neighbors to the east and west. I also looked at the code, and as Councilor mentioned, if it was a shed, it would be allowed higher in height. If it was a detached, 2-car detached garage, you'd have 15-foot height. It's permitted in the back rear at the location. It would require a 2-foot setback on the side and rear yard setbacks, and that would be a detached garage on the property. Based on those assumptions, my research in the area, property values continue to appreciate in the area. A couple of years ago, you probably could have bought a lot of these houses at $1 million. Now they're up to $2 and $3 and $4 and plus $1 million. And in my opinion, if the application is granted, property values will continue to appreciate, just like in many of the other houses.
$11.5 million down the street.
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes, sir.
there's one listed for $11.5 million down the street.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, that's correct. I can't afford that one. I got to do some more cases.
Out of my price range.
I just want to enter one other exhibit. I have some photos that were taken by Mr. Licatese. I'm going to have him just speak that he took those photos.
So the very first photo here, back in December, I'd say about 10 months after the construction was started and Mr. Donnarumma had raised an objection, I had tried to compromise with him, and I was invited into his home. So from his kitchen, with his permission, I took this picture of what it looks like from his kitchen to the deck, which he had always kept these very high Lelands, these trees that were there. The view from there previously would have been looking at a peaked roof. And the structure that's up there now, we're going to probably take the columns down and just have glass there, which will be an even more aesthetically pleasing view. So I took this picture, and I took from our side yard, from our home, pictures showing what we look at to the west, which is Mr. Donnarumma's home and Mr. Sinello's home. I'd like to also point out that when we purchased the home, we did have a deck from the second level that was equal to the second story here that we could walk out. That was since taken down, and when we went for the variance in 2011, we had the deck with the peaked roof since then. So these pictures were all pictures that I had taken to show you a different view.
Okay, I'm going to submit those as an applicant's exhibit as
Can
well.
you show them to
Yes.
opposing counsel, please?
Sure. And I just note, if you looked at the aerial photos from 2020, you'll see that the neighbor had Leland cypress planted there. They didn't even breach the height of the old fence. And if you look at the current photos, they're almost as tall as the deck already, and that's only 3 years. And those Lelands grow easy 2 feet a year. So I just wanted to point that out in the photos that there is a screening of Leland cypress maintained by the neighbor to the view of the deck.
No objections, we'll take those into evidence.
Okay, I would just summarize by saying, based upon Mr. Nelson's testimony and the evidence we submitted on the record, it's our position that the variances are minor in nature. The previous structures that had existed for over 10 years without detriment to the neighbors, the proposals in keeping with the character of the area and in keeping with the variances that were previously granted by this board, and will not be detrimental to the surrounding property owners, and we request your favorable consideration. Thank you. Would you like us to step down?
I do.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Christopher Wagner, law firm of Humes and Wagner, 147 Forest Avenue, Locust Valley, New York. I'm here this afternoon on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Michael Dunarama, who reside at 182 Bayside Drive, which is the property immediately to the west of the subject parcel. We are here to speak in opposition to the variances specifically associated with case 421. My clients have lived in their home for over 30 years. They've raised their 4 kids in this home. They wish that they weren't here today. They are retirees, and they would much prefer to be sitting on the beach right now, spending time with their 4 children and 5 grandchildren. And I'm quite sure they would prefer spending money on something other than retaining my services. But this is where we are, not because we want to be, but because we have to be. My clients need to protect their rights and speak in opposition to these substantial variances that, if approved, will have a significant negative impact not only on my client's use and enjoyment of his own property, but within the surrounding community as a whole. Regarding the 2011 variances, I think there are significant distinctions between that which was approved in 2011 and that which is being presented this afternoon. Specifically, well, for starters, in 2011, my client was unaware that there were variances associated with the deck that the applicant was pursuing at that time. What he thought they were pursuing only were variances related to the renovation of the home, of the principal structure. Had he been aware of the variances that were being requested back in 2011 for the deck and the trellis, he would have objected at that time. My client informs me that construction of this 2-story attached deck started in August of '22 and continued throughout the fall of '22. My client first called the Department of Buildings in November of '22 to inquire about this work, as he had no knowledge of any permits or any variances being granted, specifically relative to the location and size of the 2-story attached deck. My client informs me that he followed up with Department of Buildings in January of '23 for a status. He was told at that time there was no record of his November '22 complaint, so he made another complaint in January of this year. Upon information and belief, the town inspected and issued a stop work order in January of 2023. Fast forward to March, instead of complying with the stop work order and trying to legalize, the applicant's contractors were back at it, still without permits, and additional work was being done to this illegal 2-story deck. The inspector came out and noted a violation of the stop work order on March 31st, 2023. This history is all important as it relates to the self-created hardship. I have visited the site personally and viewed the applicant's property from my client's property, and I have various pictures and violation reports that I would like to submit into evidence.
Could you show them to opposing counsel, please?
Yeah.
Did you take these photographs yourself?
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'd like to clarify that some of the photographs were taken by myself, some of the photographs were taken by my client because they were taken during the time in which construction was being done before I was retained. So between the two of us, we're happy to answer any questions the board might have with respect to admitting these photographs into evidence.
Okay, and they fairly and accurately represent the conditions existing at the premises?
That's, yes.
You and your client will testify?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. What are these? Copies?
The first two pages are just copies of the town's violation reports. And then there are several photographs that, I apologize if they're not in chronological order, but they show construction being done without the permits in October of '22, October 16th of '22, November 9th of 2022. Shows work being done after a stop work order was issued on April 3rd, 2023, March 31st, 2023. Then again on June 8th, 2023, specifically, presumably an electrician installing lights within this stairs that lead up to the second-story attached deck. We have a photograph of June 17, 2023, which shows the stairways illuminated at nighttime, and the view and the impact from my client's property. And we have some photographs that, in my opinion, taken on July 6, 2023, which show how this two-story attached deck, both from my client's backyard as well as his second-story window, really block and occlude his water view. And then we also have pictures of the prior structure. My understanding was in 2011, the variances were for an open trellis, but these photos show an enclosed roof. I also note on the town records, there was never a CO or CC for that permit. It remains open, so I don't know why an inspection was never called for, or what happened with that. If it was built outside the scope of the approval, I'm not sure. But the present-day structure is significantly closer to the side yard. That side yard intrusion into the setback is exacerbated by the height of this structure. It's going to be fully enclosed, and I have some other points that I'd like to make with respect to how that's going to negatively impact my client. This Atlantic Beach neighborhood is beautiful. As Mr. Nelson reported, property values are through the roof. I even saw an article in last week's New York Post about how Atlantic Beach is being sought after as by the next Hamptons. And the day that I went down to meet Mr. and Mrs. Dunromer at their property, there's building happening all over. So I would argue that any approvals are going to have a precedential impact on Wall Street folks coming into Atlantic Beach, or building being done present day within the neighborhood. And make no mistake, who wouldn't love a backyard such as the applicant is pursuing? It's beautiful, but the problem is it doesn't comply with the town code. And it's our position that granting these variances would have a significant negative impact to my client's use and enjoyment of the property, and a very real and harmful precedent to the surrounding neighborhood. I would like to briefly address the 5 factors that the board has to consider when applying the prescribed balancing test. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting these variances. Again, specifically to case 421. The answer to that question is quite simply yes. The second-story attached deck is right on my client's property line. With its height, its imposing structure, remind you of the Tower of Babel, the impact of the required setback is intensified. Decks are a place for congregation, socialization. They are a place for families and friends to gather, to eat and drink, to play music. We already see lights on this proposed deck. The two-story deck, not just one story, a second story, and then pillars loom over my client's property line. People on this deck will be looking down directly into my client's property. This will certainly negatively impact my client's use and enjoyment of his property, will negatively impact my client's privacy in using his own yard, and as per the pictures submitted, it already significantly impacts my client's water view from both his backyard and also from his second-story window. And while I don't have the initials or the expertise of Mr. Nelson, it's our position that it will negatively impact my client's property value. The argument that something so big and right on the property line that it will not have a negative impact on property value, I just have a hard time processing. Furthermore, aside from my client's own property, the precedential impact of the approval of these variances would be extremely harmful to the surrounding community. If this is approved, builders and developers with money will use this approval to their advantage and try and squeeze out every inch of lot coverage. Both myself and my clients are from Queens. We love where we grew up, but we moved east for more of a suburban neighborhood feel. But the proliferation of this type of max build-out and the ensuing concrete oases have the potential to turn this beautiful little neighborhood into something that you might see on the waterfront of Queens or Brooklyn. Mill Basin comes to mind. Factor two, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other feasible method or alternative. The answer here is also yes. The lot width in the rear of the property is 100 feet. There are certainly alternative sites for this two-story deck. The applicant has room to work with, centered with his home perhaps, but perhaps he doesn't want to occlude his own water view. Had he filed a building permit application in the first instance, he and his design professionals would have received a denial letter and could have considered alternative locations, but he did not. Instead, the board is presented with a fait accompli argument. Courts have held that presenting a board with a fait accompli argument is never justification for the granting of an area variance, and granting same would be prejudicial to the neighboring property owners whose buildings do conform. As we know, boards are charged with granting the minimum variance necessary, and there's been absolutely no effort on the part of the applicant to comply with the setbacks for this two-story attached deck. Factor three, is the requested area substantial? The answer here, in our opinion, is unequivocally yes. This two-story deck is not being built in line with the required side yard or rear yard. It's essentially right on my client's property line and right on the rear line adjacent to the canal. Again, this is exacerbated due to the height of the structure. The permitted lot area occupied is 27.5%. Doing some math, I thought they were seeking more than they are seeking, but I'm not an engineer or an architect, but the lot area seems to keep going up and up. Certainly, these requests are substantial. Factor four, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse impact on the physical and/or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. The answer here is yes. The property is located in an AE flood zone. It's also located within a LIMWA. The two-story wood deck right on the property line presents a hazard to my client's property. It's attached. If the deck were to break away, it's not unreasonable to think that it could float down the canal and cause damage to neighboring properties and structures. Furthermore, given the proximity to my client's property, it's not unreasonable to think that a fire on the deck could easily spread to my client's property. These are significant life and safety issues. Also, looking at all the concrete and the impervious structures, I wonder where all the drainage is going. Is it going into the canal, to the bay, and further increases bacteria levels and results in beach closures? Factor five, is this a self-created hardship? This is textbook definition of a self-created hardship. The applicant has lived on the subject property for approximately 30 years, and upon information and belief has undergone several substantial building projects. As the applicant's representative admits, and the board knows, this applicant was before this very board in 2011. Certainly the applicant is aware of the town's procedures. In fact, in reading the variance back in 2011, it was to quote-unquote maintain. So it appears similar that there was a similar fact pattern. Some building was done before permits were issued, which is the same playbook that we have here and now on a grander scale. Again, had the applicant filed for a building permit in the first instance, he would have refreshed his recollection that variances are required. He did not. Instead, the building was done without permits. The building was done in violation of stop work orders, and I respectfully submit that this is a textbook definition of a self-created hardship. Based upon the totality of the facts, we respectfully submit that any benefit to the applicant, if these variances associated with case 421 are granted, is significantly outweighed by the detriment to the health, safety, welfare of the surrounding community, both to my client's use and enjoyment of his own backyard, where he's lived for 30 years, and the precedential impact that it might have on this beautiful little neighborhood. As such, we respectfully request that you consider the denial of the variances associated with case 421. Thank you. I think my client is good.
Pardon?
I think we're done.
Okay.
But there might be some other folks who want to speak. I also, just I know for the record, in reviewing some of the evidence that the applicant submitted on one of the consent petitions was a Mr. and Mrs. Delaney, Lot 22. I believe they've since sent correspondence to the town revoking or rescinding their consent to this project. Furthermore, for the record, I believe that several letters and emails have been sent to the secretary from neighbors who are not able to be here tonight this afternoon, expressing their concerns and displeasure with this particular application. Thank you.
Welcome. Would anyone else like to speak in opposition to this application? Come up.
I do. Good afternoon. My name is Julie O'Connell. I live at 34 Edward Street in Limbrook, New York.
Good afternoon.
Chairman, this person does not live anywhere near subject premises, so I will either object to testimony or ask the board to, give it the appropriate weight for someone who does not reside or own the home that's in the vicinity of subject property.
I can state my relationship if that helps. I'm the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Donnarumma.
Okay.
Thank you.
Speak.
Again, my name is Julie O'Connell, and I'm Michael and Patricia Donnarumma's daughter, and my parents reside at 182 Bayside Drive in Atlantic Beach, directly next door to the Licatese property being discussed today. I ask the board just for a few minutes of your time. I know it's been a long day. My parents are regular, hardworking people, and 30 years ago they made the decision to take a leap and buy a home in the beautiful, small beach town of Atlantic Beach. I was 19 at the time, and I recall many people saying to me, "Where are your parents moving?" I never heard of Atlantic Beach. Although I only lived there for a short time before getting married and purchasing a home in the town of Hempstead section of Limbrook, I knew that it was just that, a special, quaint, beautiful place that no one had ever heard of, and a perfect spot for my parents to share with their children, grandchildren, and more importantly, a place to grow old together. Their home has been just that for our family, a place where we gather for holidays and family fun, a special spot where my 3 children grew up with countless sleepovers and long days at the beach and enjoying their grandparents' beautiful backyard. I've personally hosted parties in my parents' yard, sharing the beautiful home they worked so hard to create with my friends and colleagues. My parents have always been neighborly people, caring for the property and interacting socially with neighbors like the Licateses. They have attended social gatherings at their neighbors' homes, attended showers and weddings, and many other social events and with neighbors on the block. I have personally sat on the beach and chatted from the yard and exchanged numerous conversations with their neighbors as well. I was so grateful during Superstorm Sandy at how Bayside Drive worked together to truly care for one another, and that was especially meaningful to me as the daughter of people who were stuck on that property for many weeks without power. This is the reason I stand before you today to share a little insight about how this premature building of this structure has affected my parents emotionally. As a grown child, it has been very difficult to watch. This is a time in their life where they should be enjoying themselves without unnecessary stress, and watching something that clearly is a blatant disregard of the rules regarding size, height, and lot coverage, especially in a side yard that is built so close to my parents' property, has been very upsetting. I've taken hundreds of pictures in that backyard over the last 30 years, and now I cannot take a photo without seeing this large structure in the background. Today, I ask the board to seriously consider the impact and the precedent you will be setting, which will adversely affect the waterfront community of Atlantic Beach. May I also point out that the construction took place without permission, and these variance applications should, from my understanding, only ask to build outside the code out of need. I do not know anyone who needs this type of structure. I never thought that at this stage in their life I would see my parents so upset, distraught, and consumed about something of this nature. But I do understand that when you work hard your entire life to create a home that's special to you and your family, that a situation like this can cause that to happen. This has truly been disappointing and sad for my entire family to watch. As residents and taxpayers of the town of Hempstead, myself included, we greatly rely on the integrity of people like yourselves to ensure that all residents adhere to rules and ensure the greater good of our community.
Thank you. Mr. Minerva, would you like to sum up?
Yes. Okay, just want to respond to some of the comments. So with regard to the variances in 2011, the neighbor would have received notice of those variances in this hearing. If it was a maintain application, then they would have seen the deck up and received the notices. We do acknowledge it's a maintain application, like many of the applications that come before this board. They are maintain applications, and that is irrelevant into whether or not the merits of the variance under the test have been met. I'm not sure about the certificate of completion for the prior deck, but it's not there anymore, and I would note that I submitted the prior approved plans signed by the building department, so you can compare exactly what was approved in 2011 to the current plan before you today. Additionally, we submitted the aerial photos so you can see that the old deck with the peaked roof was in the same corner as this property. I'd also note that their property is further north. They're not in line. The lot lines are not against each other. Our property goes further south into the canal, so this deck is not next to them. It's in the corner. We addressed the pillars that were on top of the deck. My client offered to remove them and replace them with a glass railing. With that glass railing, the deck itself, it's 12 feet 5 inches. The old deck was 15 feet 5 inches to the top of the roof. So it's a reduction from the view. And we submitted the photos that there are Leland cypress there that the neighbor maintains that are already almost at the top of the flat roof deck and will only grow further. Therefore, their view is not going to be of this deck, it's going to be of their shrubbery. I would also note that on the lot coverage, we're proposing at 29.18%. There's comments that it's being overbuilt. The lot coverage directly across the street from us is approved at 55%, where 27.5 is permitted, which is a minor variation. I would also note that the applicant can rebuild the old deck in the same location, which is substantially in the location of where this deck is, almost as a matter of right, without a substantial change in circumstances. The prior variance would have to be approved again. I would also note that we have to comply with all codes through the permitting process. So these will be structures that will be constructed and up to the strict current New York State building codes. They will not be structures that are going to fall into the water. The last thing, I just wanted to submit one case. There's a very similar case where before this board that went to an Article 78 where a 6-foot fence was installed on top of a 4-foot bulkhead, 10 feet high, and the neighbor objected to the views. This board granted the application, and Article 78 was filed by the neighbor, which the court upheld the board's decision, and it almost specifically speaks to the case of the view, that when you have a neighbor, the neighbor can build structures and there's no guarantee of the view. I would also note that they do have a view of the water. They are directly on the canal, so they can see the water. We're not blocking their view of the water. So I just want to submit that.
Do you want to give us a citation? You'll submit it?
Citation is 24 MIS 3D 1213. And that concludes. Okay, I'm sorry, my client would just like to note a few additional items for the record.
If I may, in rebuttal to what was said here today, I need to address a few things. Firstly, the emotional impact has been the same. I don't have my children and my grandchildren here, but my wife has pulled over to the side of the road, emotionally broken down over what has occurred. When Mrs. Delaney came to visit our home, Mr. Donorama, through his cameras and by stalking us and hiding in bushes, actually followed her down to her home, and then for an hour made her change her mind. He has just invaded our privacy, and if you look at those photographs, you will see that those photographs were taken from a camera that's pointed from his illegal sunroom to our bedroom, our bathroom, and our rear deck in violation not only of civil but criminal laws. I know that doesn't play here today, and I wasn't going to say anything, but to come before this board as someone who's been emotionally abused and that was unaware of the variances that he was served, just like he was served with these variances. The reason that this was built was that my contractor told me that we were able to replace the deck that was there. This wasn't supposed to be touched, but because of the location of the pool, which we had the permit in 2021, he tells you that it started construction in August of 2022. That's also inaccurate. It started at the end of 2021. And they told me that they had to put helical piles beneath that deck and it had to get ripped up at a substantial cost. And I said, well, let's go back to the town. And they said, no, it's just a replacement. We're building what's there. And what's before you today is a smaller footprint of what was actually there, and they're telling you that there's this monstrosity, but look at the Google photos. What was there was more obstructive. The rear of the Donorama home is at the beginning of my home. It is so set back, they have no real water view. And the obstruction in the corner of my property, they never see the water from there. They would only see the water when they walk out directly from their doors. So it's an illusion that they're telling you. And when we started the construction and the deck had to come down, I believe psychologically Mr. Donorama just never, he was like, wow, this is great. It's no longer here. And then said nothing while it was built for 10 months. He didn't come here until 10, 11 months later, and all I did was go to his home on many occasions to try to resolve this. And he wouldn't compromise, just wouldn't compromise. To take down the second level, which is basically the roof of what was there. So I come before this board, not that I surreptitiously built something without the town. We went in as soon as there was an objection to legalize what was there, and what we have is actually smaller than what's been there for all these years. Yeah.
The lawyer made that point, Mr. Licatese.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have any other questions? Anyone else who would like to speak? Pardon? Yeah.
Did you want to say?
You want to say something, ma'am? Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to speak to this case for 2 minutes, if possible.
Please do, maybe it'll cover it.
Well, I don't object to any rebuttal.
This was submitted after.
It was a case that was before this board. Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to distinguish that case from unreported Nassau County Supreme Court case with respect to a fence on top of a bulkhead. Nobody's congregating on a fence. Nobody's having parties on a fence. No one's playing music or having lighting on a fence. We're talking about a 2-story deck, which is wholly distinguishable from a fence. Again, we have 1 story, 2 stories. People hanging out on the 2nd story, looking down. We have people hanging out on the 1st floor, 2nd floor. So wholly distinguishable from a deck. There are some other things that Mr. Licatesi, personal attacks, but I won't even get into that. Thank you.
For your edification, there are 3 lawyers on this board. I think we can understand the distinction between a deck and a fence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Madam, there was another young lady out there.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Miriam Sinello. We are neighbors. Miriam and Andrew Sinello are neighbors next. We are neighbors to Mike Donnarumma.
Your address, please, ma'am.
176 Bayside Drive.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know all the parameters of the legalese or what happened first or next. All I know is when all of this work began, no one informed us. We never got any letters. We were never informed of anything that was going to happen in terms of construction. If we want to dig back and dig deeper into what occurred, and watching from my window, seeing that the actual earth was being unearthed from the bay and used as part of the structure and the foundation of the deck, which I think, and what I know of, is completely illegal. Of course, I don't have evidence. I'm just giving it to you from a point of view of a very simple homeowner. I know one thing. It does impact on privacy. I don't know the difference between a pergola, a trellis, or anything like that, but I know that a pergola does not have a roof. So I don't know which pergola they're talking about. Is it the pergola of the pool? Is it the pergola of the roof? And this is not a deck. This is an attachment with a staircase that is, in our view, we've never said anything, but I see how harmful this is. And true, the roof was pitched perhaps higher from what they're saying in terms of dimension, but now you're seeing a 2-story structure which on top has pillars, which now may be replaced by glass, which is the same story as before. So to justify staircase being put on the side of a house that I now see, that we now see, that we all see, and never having said a word about this, and not understanding what was going on, and the deck itself is not the deck that used to be. We have a deck like that, but it's attached to our house, and it's over our den. This deck is sort of attached, but not attached, and however they construct it, which I cannot explain to you. So it's our privacy for sure. The landscape, for sure, is not the same. And I don't know about dimensions and codes, but I know that as a homeowner, and for some reason, the assessments haven't come through for the 176 Bayside Drive or Donnaruma's for some reason, so I don't know if our home values are even going to be depressed if you look it up on the Zestimate value right now. So I don't know what they're talking about. So this is just a simple bird's eye view of what I've just caught over time. If there are illegalities or something is improper, then so be it, and we'll have to go along with it. But it has definitely changed the landscape of where we live, and it does impact us as well. And talking about Mrs. Delaney, who's our neighbor that Mr. Licatesi said was at her home, she came to our home as well. When she saw the structure from the point of view of our home, she was appalled and did not know that that existed and changed her mind. And she doesn't even live on the canal. So this is just me giving it to you in a simple form.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the hearing be closed, that the matter be placed on the decision calendar. Everyone who signed in on the case will receive a copy of the board's decision by mail once it is rendered. Thank you all for coming and participating, and have a safe home.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Thank you all for coming. Wow. It was.
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, as always.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
we'll consider them one application, even though they have separate numbers, 486, 487, 488. Do we want to hold that case?
Well, it's 485.
I think we
Yeah,
should hold
hold.
that case.
Yeah, let's hold and check it out.
Would it be proper or improper for us to ask Nassau County for Police Department for accidents, incidences that occur on that property?
See why
On the intersection?
It's that, I know of my own accord, it's
Yeah.
horrible.
I agree with you, it is
But
horrible.
you know,
but
I had to
have-
recuse myself from the case, but.
Yes, but
No,
just to,
I have eyes.
My concern is that's considering outside evidence that was not.
Okay, that's why-
But also personal knowledge of the board members is admissible in any decision, so I think that might cover it.
I think we
okay,
can do
that's
that.
fine.
All right,
I think we can make an inquiry.
We're going to hold the case.
Yeah, that's all.
All right, last cases, next case is 421 to 423 of 2023. Do we want to hold that case? Maybe some other board members would like to look at the premises.
I've inspected it
Yeah,
twice,
that's
but
all.
if someone else would like to.
I've looked at it.
I've inspected it
Yeah.
several times.
I mean, I definitely think that getting rid of those
pillars.
pillars I don't think we should approve those pillars. I think the glass up there, but because right now, I think even every photograph consistently shows that right now, the only thing he can see from his, other than his trees, are those pillars. If those pillars weren't there, I don't even think you can see that deck anymore
Well,
because of the trees.
You can look at your neighbors' backyards, which seems to be the only view that you have, with the exception of a view of the canal, which is not going to be obstructed
Not at
because
all.
of this.
Right.
I mean, when they talk about privacy, there is no privacy on that entire street.
Right.
And if you look at the-
I mean, you can look across and your neighbors can watch what you're eating for dinner. And if you're barbecuing outside, they can probably hone in on the size
Agreed.
of the frankfurters.
But if you look at the photograph with the cypress trees, literally the only thing, the opposition cypress trees, the only thing you can see above them of that deck right now is those pillars.
pillars.
If those are gone, I don't believe they're even going to see them. And we might want to also, to the extent that any of those lights all over the stairs are going to, maybe they could be somehow shielded from, if they're shining into the neighbor's windows or something. I think that it's fair enough to ask that to be moderated, so it, something, so it.
Do you want to craft a decision?
Yeah, shield lights will put timers on it, or timers on the lights, or just...
Well, I don't know if you want to put timers, because it's a safety issue, so
Shield
if
the
people out
lights.
there, I want them to have lights on that.
Shield the lights, remove the pillars. Anything else anyone would like?
No, I thought it was an okay application
Okay.
with those two issues.
Hold it for a decision.
So a draft.
Franklin Square, I'm recused on that case. Anybody have any thoughts?
I think one or more board members probably should go take a look at that.
Okay.
I'd like to look back to the
I'll look at it.
materials also.
You gonna go, Kim?
Sure.
Okay, reserve calendar.
Concerning case, sorry, concerning case 199 of 23, the Starbucks case, still nothing from Mr. Benesso. Do we receive Ms. Pangallo on
Still nothing, we're still on hold for that.
Is the board prepared to make a decision on 265 of 23, Eisler Enterprises LLC?
I mean, I think we know what it is, but I think that we should really, I don't know, what do other people think?
I was under the impression it was denied.
It is,
I
but
would
he's
like to
talking about
adopt the draft decision, the latest draft decision.
Yeah, he sent it to us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's that? What do you want?
No, go ahead.
So can I have a motion?
Yes. I move that the board...
I'm going to recuse on that case, just for good measure.
Case number 265 in Lido Beach, the Enterprises...
Eisler Enterprises.
Eisler Enterprises LLC, 44 Bath Avenue in Lido Beach, Bath Street, that we adopt a draft decision that Mr. Bogle has furnished and sent to all of us.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Recusal.
Anything on Rudolph?
We're still waiting for that.
We're still waiting for that.
The next one's 362, we're still waiting for the building department to report back on
Okay.
whether they were able to get into the basement.
Lavovsky, 242-23. Did anybody, I went out to inspect.
No, we're waiting for a new plan. So they submitted a plan while they were building in the DFE.
Correct, yeah, so this is one where they needed a height variance, but then they said it was in a DFE, and then they built below the
Okay, great.
DFE.
Cifarelli? I thought I did. I'll hold that. I want to take a look at that.
Okay, concerning 371-23, Bais Haknesses Mishkan Yisrael, a draft decision was provided to the board on Monday, the most recent edits, if there's any discussion to be had.
I thought we should adopt it.
Yes, I think you did a nice job on
Yep.
tweaking it,
Okay, can I have a motion?
the 371.
371 of 2023, Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the decision drafted by council to the board.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
We can't have any abstentions. We have to.
382 of 2023?
Yes, I did that case.
So did I.
And I would move, it was totally fine, I would move as it relates to case 382 of 2023, Atlantic Beach, 139 Bayside Drive, LLC, affecting the property at 139 Bayside Drive, be approved as requested, renewed for the same period, same conditions.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? That's great, because I was contemplating buying that house for $11.5 million, only if they would reduce the price by $10 million.
Oh, my God.
Concerning case
That's when it
433,
was in the Post. Good for you.
concerning case 433, I did reach out to council, but I have not received a response yet.
Okay?
433.
I went and looked at this one
This area.
also. 445 through 448. My primary concern had to do with whether or not the living fence or the dwelling was an issue. Because of the shape of the road, it's completely not an issue. You can't even see it when you're backing out of the driveway because it's on a large curve, so it doesn't have any impact on and so I would, Joanne, did you take a look at
I
it?
agree with what you said, yes.
Okay, I would move that we grant that as that case is 445 through 448, as requested with all the usual fence conditions and other conditions relevant to the requested items.
I'll second that.
Did you hear it?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm not going to vote. Thank you.
Okay,
Abstain.
you're welcome. Next case. Gentlemen,
I did this case also.
453.
Yeah, let me just look at the picture again real quick. I did 7 cases yesterday, so.
No wonder you didn't have time to eat.
Let's see, I think Harrogate was the last one I did. Oh, yeah, this is the case with the little house.
Oh, yeah, I inspected that as well.
Yeah, that was fine.
That was fine.
Oh, the little.
Anybody want to, yeah,
I move that case
The Hobbit
453 of
Yes.
2023, 65 Harrogate Street,
Even
be
sounds
approved
like
as
it.
requested.
Very good.
Usual shed and other relevant conditions.
I'll second that.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Really?
I was,
Absent.
yeah.
For the morning.
You can't
absent
vote.
the
You
whole
don't
thing.
have to abstain.
You were absent the whole thing?
Yeah, this is when I had my,
Oh.
Heart surgery. You're excused.
358-23, still waiting for the report back from the building department.
460.
460, I provided a draft decision to the board. Basically, while it is a use variance, this is concerning storage in a garage. I essentially argued that while the board is aware of the stringent standards for a use variance, this is a de minimis request, and that therefore it should be given approval.
Okay, do I have a
Okay,
motion?
Chairman, with respect to case 460 of 2023 with property 2331 Rockwood Avenue in Baldwin, I move to adopt the draft decision.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions?
That was a nice draft, by the way.
I appreciate that. 462, 463, I apologize. I did not know I was directed to call counsel on the...
Rob.
Rescind the comment you made about the night.
Too late, it's already on the record, it's passed.
Motion to withdraw.
Oh, no, there's another one.
463, did you call counsel?
Yeah,
or-
on that was the subdivision. They're together, just two different applicants.
Full.
Do you have anything on 468? Because I did speak to Luke Carnival about this.
What are you gonna call about?
That was concerning the backup space, you remember? Because it's those parking spaces.
Yes.
He said that the spaces are illegal, but there isn't any requirement for the bollards. He's saying pursuant to state code, I know, Mr. Pellegrini, you've
Who
mentioned
said
this.
that? Who'd you
I spoke
call?
with Luke Carnival about that.
Yeah.
Pretty much the Friday after the last hearing. That was the information I got concerning. He said the spaces would need to be legalized because they're backing up into that thoroughfare. I forget what street it
Yeah,
is.
but they pop up right against the building.
He said that does not require, he said that bollards can be, he says there doesn't need to be a space, he says. Bollards can be installed.
I'll call you when I'm finished, Joe.
That's,
Don't kill the messenger.
no, I understand. That's not at all what Mark Anthony told me. He's a registered architect that does this also.
I mean, we can hold it for
Interesting.
next hearing and I can get a better answer. If that's okay with the board.
I don't,
Has there ever been an accident? Like if someone smashed through the building?
it's backing up over the street, over the sidewalk, at a nightclub.
We basically denied those spaces.
At that other place we did.
Yeah.
Denied those spaces. So if we probably, I could put something together in which we specify that those spaces are not to be maintained, and we would grant the other spaces that are, I think, on the northern parcel, or the parcel. I'm trying to remember.
What's the goal? We just don't want those spots there, Joe?
They back
Because
up,
of the safety issues?
yes, similar to the one that we did in,
Okay, so want me to put something together, I'll draft a decision, which would be...
If the,
just about, there's other spots in the corner there that, where they had put the sign, remember the sign it did? I thought we did this last week and we said we should deny the parking, everything except for a handicap spot.
is there other parking around? Do they have
I
a
don't
unit
know.
lot or anything?
Well,
It's on a dead end, next to East.
Oh, it's a dead
he
end?
said that people walk a lot. That's what. what's his
That's
name
not so
said.
bad if they're barking out on a dead
They
end,
walk
is it?
there.
Kind of in the industrial area, like the groups, I don't know if their house.
Cassidy's? I thought it was up more near Mark Anthony's office.
He said people
Block
walk
away.
a lot.
Huh?
A block away.
Yeah.
He testified.
And he's way up north.
Yeah, I think it's up by like police,
But my pay grade.
Oh, I know it, yes, yes, that Ace Hardware. I like the other one.
All right, let's stay on, stay on, stay
it's
on,
not a dead end.
All right.
stay on target here, don't.
So unusual
Let's not get
for
on
you to
Ace
say
Hardware.
that, Katura.
What? I'm sorry.
No,
Making
my
fun of me.
comment was directed to the
The
person.
derogatory
sitting next to me.
remark was directed at me, as have all of them been today.
Well, you know what? If the shoe fits.
If the shoe fits,
With socks.
Well, all right, what are we going to do on these cases? Come on.
if the shoe.
I think you should take a look at the parking.
Okay,
I,
well, hold it.
I'll take a look at it again.
Good.
I was there, I have photos of it, I'll
It's a refund.
re-inspect.
770, next case, 26423.
Okay, we have a bunch of, the board did request that we provide permits for multiple properties. I received the notes from Ms. D'Amato, and I think Patrick received the notes from you, Mr. Chairman. For
What were my notes?
there were multiple properties in which they were referenced in how they essentially sign locations, because they transport their workers from a, what was it, a Mavis? No, it was what was
It was
the?
a car.
It was Avis.
Davis is
Yeah, it was, it was, they were, yes, exactly. They had a deal with Avis to transport their workers so that they wouldn't be parking on the parcel. So the subject parcel property on 1305 Hempstead,
Yeah, but they used to.
there was, they were, I know there was testimony saying that it used to be a taxi cab stand. That was correct. That was the only grant that they received prior to coming before us. 1255 Hempstead Turnpike, that was the Avis, correct?
The guy just has
That's
to
what
stop
we told
so
them?
many cars. but he-
Special Auto Group, okay, that was, they had the wall signs that were, I know you were concerned about the wall signs at the Special Auto Group. Those were permitted, and the ground sign was permitted back in 1970. So they had permits for that. 1285 Hempstead Turnpike, that was, oh, that was the used car sale lot. Back in 1953, they received a permit for it, so they've been operating as a used car sale lot since then. 707, I was written down, I didn't receive any sort of information on that. I'm not sure, it might have been, I was reading the handwriting wrong, but it doesn't seem to be in the vicinity anyways, did not start with 12. And then the one next door, 1260, that was the one that they said was like a gas station. Yeah, so it actually had a permit back in 1987 for a 4,000-gallon oil tank with storage and a 2,500-gallon oil tank without storage, and they were also permitted auto repairs and sales both in 1987. So majority of what they testified seems like it was legalized just a very long time ago.
I think our main concern was how they were, I was trying to really fully appreciate how they didn't need certain things at this location because they allegedly facilitated those activities at another location, and I really wanted to understand if that actually was how it was
Yeah.
going.
What about the
You know.
car wash too? Wasn't, didn't they say something about car washing?
It was a mess.
Well, there is
they said-
no permission to wash cars
Right,
there.
but they said they have a
Yet they
hose
do
and
it.
they do it.
They do it.
They do
But
it.
but is the car wash private for their business?
No, there was a comment made about a car wash.
Yes.
There is no permit for
Official,
a car wash there.
But they
But they
still
do
wash-
wash the cars, so we
Right.
have to prohibit that.
It's their own cars that they
Yeah.
wash, yes.
Yeah, so they have a bucket.
No, and a
Well,
hose.
and a
They said they
hose,
have a hose
you know.
Yeah.
and they,
And it clogs the sewers, and you
But
want to give us a...
If they have fuel tanks that are in-ground fuel tanks for all those years, I believe that's got to be updated and replaced. And then it would flip into a GSS, and then it would flip the bugger off this board into the other board.
Did you mean to say that out loud, Joe?
The subject parcel wasn't, that was right next door.
Subject property doesn't have this oil tank.
Oh, they're not the ones that have.
1305.
That was,
Yeah.
the one that had,
All right.
the gas station
We
was,
still
next
get the
door,
booker.
1260, the subject was 1305, 1260 was the one that had the gas station.
Okay.
That's now supposedly not operating, but some people in opposition said it was operating, but they said it wasn't.
It's not the same owner either, or it may have been,
like,
or
it was a verbal agreement from one company to the other, but you're not allowed to do that.
He doesn't use his name personally. It's
Yeah.
usually Cortex.
right.
Who's the attorney on this?
Was this written? Was this lit?
Yes.
The lit lot.
Okay. So what about, conditions? We talked to him about conditions, not parking on the sidewalks,
Sidewalk.
not parking in front, not parking.
Did he send you those in writing?
He did not send me those in writing, but I do have them written in my notes that are in my notes.
Completely unenforceable.
Well, but we can,
It's not going to be monitored.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
I remember you were very concerned with the clear side triangle, that the spaces towards the rear had to be maintained as the parking only for customers.
Yes.
Not for storage of cars.
All right.
And didn't we have a limit, 18 cars or something like that?
I believe that was
Yes.
the number, but I do have the number, but I believe that's the number.
Do a draft.
I think a draft makes sense.
Whatever happened?
Ben Sickle?
Digress. To the luxury motors in Franklin Square that we denied.
That went to Article 78, and we won in the Supreme Court. They filed a notice of appeal. They have not been found.
Are they, do they still have time?
Their time to appeal has not expired yet. The notice of appeal was filed, I believe, 4 months ago. So they got 2 months and 2 extensions to file.
If they file for
So we
extension, or did they?
can't violate
They
them?
have not yet, but they've expected to do that.
So we can't violate them at this point because they have an
Well-
Article 78 pending?
Well, arguably, no, that's it. Arguably, it's if a case is pending here, but,
What about up here?
I mean, in other words, the idea was you don't get violated because you might get approved here, right? And so you stay all, unless it's irreparable death or irreparable harm, otherwise enforcement proceedings stay. But once we got rid of the case here, like, you know,
Does the CPLR is similar kind of?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure CPLR is a similar kind of language.
I don't know.
Enforcement of the Supreme Court provision.
Check it.
First thing I have is stupid. You guys remember?
He meant to say that.
Yes, actually. If you guys remember the 1785 park in Merrick Road, that was the one where they had their patio all the way up to the fence and they wanted to build a super big fence because their neighbors on the other side hated them.
wait. Residential or commercial?
Residential, 2 neighbors back to back. One put a patio, like a deck, all the way up to basically the property line, like 2 feet. We made them build a 10-foot
Oh,
fence.
yes.
I remember that.
Somebody went there and...
The mean neighbor.
Yes, my condition said a fence shall be of stockade picket design. Now, they built a PVC fence. Now, the neighbors that were in opposition wanted a wood fence. According to Danny Leo, stockade picket does not mean wood fence, so I need to, a modification to include wood stockade picket design. If you guys are...
Wait, so is the fence built?
The fence, PVC fence is built. I said that they can satisfy their burden if they build a double fence, and one of them on the side that's facing the neighbor is of a wood stockade picket design, and they can have the PVC on their side. But I do need a motion to change that one word, so Danny can say that it needs to be.
Add the
agreed to a
word.
second
Wait, are we
fence?
trying to make them do wood?
They agreed to a second.
Yes, we want, yes, that was the opposition absolutely.
Wait, so they're gonna have to tear down the new?
No.
No, they're going to
They're
put
gonna put
PVC?
side by
The
side.
building
Back
department
to
said
back.
that if they put the wood stockade picket fence
On the
on
neighbor.
the neighbor's side, on their property line, obviously their own property line, on the neighbor's side, and put the
If there's
PVC
space.
fence on their side.
You know what'll happen?
And then that would satisfy.
You're not allowed on my property.
You got it. That's
That would
exactly
satisfy
right.
the condition.
Bust balls and get...
Well, put a gate in, then go on
Take
your
down your
property.
PVC fence and then
Yeah,
put up...
yeah.
This person in opposition has
I'm
called me
still-
twice a week for the past 2 months.
Okay.
Are these the ones that got mad because he washed his car in the driveway or
I
something?
believe that sounds familiar.
Let's make
So
a
wait.
motion. Somebody
Joe.
make a motion to
Here's-
I move that we modify that grant to include
The necessary
wood-
language.
wood fence. With the necessary
All in
language.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It was
The-
like backyards to backyard.
Yes. I know, they raised their grade a little bit.
Yes,
So,
like
yes,
2 feet.
the last thing I
Wait, so-
have is a request for a hearing concerning FCFC Realty LLC. That was the laundromat on 929 Front Street in Uniondale. I've been told by counsel that he wants a formal vote by the board up or down whether a rehearing should be granted. It would need to be unanimous. It's the laundromat.
Got it? Can I have a motion?
No, I won't make that motion.
Okay. I can.
Kim?
Can I?
Kim.
Otherwise I won't.
Go ahead and say what the motion is.
It's a motion to deny the
Is there a
reopening.
motion to deny?
That's why I
If-
didn't make
if
it,
that's
because I
what-
don't know which one I'm supposed to
If
do.
that's what we want to do.
Well, yeah, it needs to be unanimous, so
I know.
even if there's one
Make a
person.
motion on reopening that case.
It's an application for rehearing, correct?
Application for a rehearing formally brought, he wants a formal decision.
I move, I move for a rehearing with respect to that case.
I move to,
Oh,
I vote to deny.
That's okay.
oh, well, why can't I move to?
You can do
You can
that.
make the motion and then.
Sure.
also vote against it.
Yeah.
Yeah. how
You can
about
make a
that?
motion to rehear the case.
I make a motion to rehear the case.
Second?
I'm not seconding.
No one else is.
So it falls.
Motion
Want me
fails.
to- I could second and then you can...
No.
Yeah. That's it?
I think that's all I have. There's one thing we want to discuss, but it's not official business.
Okay.
I want to know about these fences. Because I'm still, so wait, we granted the applicant the right to put the tall fence or what?
Yeah, so they were coming, they wanted to maintain an 8-foot fence.
Right here.
Yeah, we can go, we motion to close.
Make a motion.
Motion to close.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?